roll call. Dwight Fleming.
Here.
Glenn Thiessen.
Here.
Brad Banneker. Absent. Derek Belton here. Dwayne Bear.
Here.
William Kropa.
Here.
Jim Schmidt.
Here.
Mel Fleming.
Here.
Kathy Enlow.
Here.
Sharon Olmstead.
Here.
Brandon Meyerhoff, our recording secretary. Russ Avey, our consultant.
Here.
And Pat, our legal counsel.
Here.
Item number 2, record proceedings from our May 29th, 2019 meeting. There was no open business left from that meeting. They are still in draft stages. We're going to carry those to the next meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting. I'm going to outline tonight's events. Well, first, we're going to conduct regular business. After that, we will open the public hearing to consider case number PC 19-01. The floor will be open to the applicant to present their proposal. The applicant may have several representatives supplement its presentation. They have requested, and the commission will allow the applicant 60 minutes to present its case. Questions of the applicant will generally be reserved until the end of the presentation. However, only members of the Planning Commission will be permitted to ask the applicant questions. The applicant's total time to present will not be reduced by those questions. Following the applicant's presentation, the county zoning administrator will present her report on the application. The zoning administrator's presentation may include the testimony of Marion County officials, staff, and other witnesses identified by the zoning administrator to address questions or issues pertaining to wind energy conversion systems. Then the Planning Commission will take comments from the public. Each person wishing to comment shall first state his or her name and address and whether you are within the footprint or not. Each person may speak for up to 5 minutes. Your allotted time will start after you have given your name and address. You will only allowed to speak once. Public comment should be addressed to the Planning Commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. The public comment period is not intended for a back and forth discussion with the Planning Commission. You should make your views and input known to them, but it is not a time to ask them questions, and you should not expect them to respond to your comments except as they later deliberate after the end of the public comment portion. When you are speaking, you may express support or agreement with previous comments, but in the interest of time, we ask you not repeat the same information. Also, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask that you come forward to the chairs by the podium while others are speaking so that we have time to hear all of your comments, but we do not spend a lot of time waiting on people to come from the back of the room. Please write your name and address on the sign-up sheet, and we'll address this before we open the public comment. The purpose of the public hearing is for the county to assess the merits of the pending conditional use permit application. This is not an appropriate forum for comments about or discussion of the lawsuit currently pending in district court concerning related matters. Please confine your comments to discussion of the merits and of the proposed conditional use, the proposed development plan, and any conditions that you believe would be appropriate to impose if a conditional use permit were granted. It is important to maintain a respectful, non-threatening atmosphere for anyone who would like to speak for or against the application. Please do not engage in actions such as cheering, booing, or clapping, etc. Following conclusion of the public comment portion of the hearing, the applicant will be provided an opportunity to respond to concerns or issues raised by the public. The Planning Commission will allow the applicant with what the chair considers to be in a reasonable time for that response. The county zoning administrator or staff may then offer further comments following the applicant's rebuttal. The Planning Commission may ask questions at any point in the hearing. When there are no further questions from the Planning Commission, the hearing will be closed. Until the Commission has rendered its decision, neither the applicant nor a member of the public will be allowed to initiate any further discussion with the Commission. The Planning Commission reserves a right to seek clarification from staff on county zoning regulations, procedural matters, or legal advice. The public hearing may be recessed periodically for short breaks. The allotted time for each break and the anticipated time for resumption of the hearing will be announced by the chair. The public hearing shall not resume prior to the announced time. During any recess, no person other than county staff will be allowed to approach a member of the Planning Commission to discuss any matter pertaining to the case. At all times, members will comply with provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act pertaining to communications among themselves. Considering the amount of information to be presented and the extent of public interest, I anticipate that this hearing will continue through this evening. If possible, we would like to conclude the hearing yet today, but we will take as much time as we feel that we need to hear information, take public comment, and ask questions that will enable us to reach a decision. If it is deemed necessary by the Commission, the public hearing may be recessed to a future date, time, and place. Likewise, the deliberations and decision of the Planning Commission following the conclusion of the public comment portion of the hearing may take place at a later date to be decided by the Commission. In such event, the date, time, and place of any subsequent meeting will be announced by the chair prior to recess or adjournment. No other notice of that meeting will be provided. Those who oppose this application who are within the notification area may file a protest petition pursuant to KSA 12-757 at the office of the Marion County Clerk, 200 South 3rd Street, Marion, Kansas, within 14 days following the decision by the Planning Commission. No protest petition filed before the Planning Commission has made its recommendation will be considered. Those filing a protest petition are responsible to comply with all legal requirements for a valid protest petition. You are not entitled to rely on the directions or advice of any county employee or official about what form the protest petition should take or what information it must include. You should pay particular attention to the requirements of KSA 25-3602. To the Planning Commission members, according to Kansas law, our decision in this matter must be based solely on information contained within the record in this case. The record consists only of public comment and materials submitted in written form since the filing of the application. The oral testimony and other evidence presented during the course of this public hearing and the recommendations of the county zoning administrator. If you believe that you can decide this case solely based on evidence and the record and in a fair and impartial manner to the benefit of all the citizens of Marion County, please raise your hand. Let the record show that all members have indicated they have. A conflict of interest may be present when you have an interest in the outcome that directly affects you personally or monetarily in a manner not shared by other members of the Commission. By a similar show of hands, is any member aware of any conflict of interest which would disqualify him or her from participating on this commission in deciding this matter? Let the record show that Mel has a conflict of interest.
Mr. Chair, I would at this time like to recuse myself from this discussion and vote because I own property with the footprint of the
Mel is at this time is recusing himself from the discussion and vote on this matter as he has land interest in the footprint of this application. We appreciate the service you all provide to Marion County. Your service is voluntary, yet you approach the duties of this board with seriousness. We highly respect the thoughtfulness and wisdom in considering cases such as the one before us today. We recognize that you set your personal feelings and biases aside to make a determination that fits with the spirit and intent of Marion County zoning regulations and comprehensive plan. And at this time, I think we'll ask the applicant to come up and present their case.
Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Pat Telstring, 5032 Edgewater Drive, Mound, Minnesota. I represent Expedition Wind. And first, what I'd like to do would be to provide to you. Is that better? Good, thank you. What I'd like to do would be to present to you additional information. I think you have seen a significant amount of information in our first submittal back in May. And we have, what you will hear and see are various reports referenced in the presentations with some of the people we brought forward today. We thought it is important that you also have full copies of those reports. So, Mr. Chairman, I present this to you for the record. I think the chairman did a nice job of describing what we're intending to do here today. We have submitted an application to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a new CUP. We have also submitted a development plan which incorporates 5 additional CUPs, and that development plan really is the implementation of our wind farm and the project schedule. By way of introduction, I think we'd like to kind of reference some key items in terms of this project. First and foremost, can I hold this? Is that all right? Does that work? First and foremost, what you see in front of you in this application is an application that has been a long time in coming. The County of Marion has been active in promoting a wind development business industry since, we believe, 2004. Beginning in 2010 and through 2015, the Doyle Group sought and received approvals on 5 different CUPs. Expedition Wind has acquired the rights for 4 of those, and we have some secondary rights on the 5th CUP that Doyle did. In 2016, the county went through a rather exhaustive process to update their WECs, and they completed that, and that was approved, and approved also by the commission. And then in at that same time, they also repealed the overlay district and allowed wind energy projects to be constructed anywhere within the county. And then in 2018, the Diamond Vista project was brought forward, received approval, and that project is now operating. My only point is that we're probably going to hear tonight all about this new stuff, wind energy, and some of the things that wind energy does. My point is much more direct, that this county has a long established history of promoting wind development, first in the county and then secondarily, and as importantly, within our development area. So today, what we're going to do with you is take you through, I think, a good outline of our plan. We'll give you a little bit more information about who the owners of the project are, and share that information such that you can evaluate that effectively. We'll move all the way through what we think are the most important issues that you need to evaluate this application. Very quickly, NRS, we're the owner of the project. We have a partner, Ares, which is a financial partner with us at this stage. NRS has been in business since 2011. We have completed 8 projects, 720 megawatts projects scattered around the country. Kind of pointed at the right direction, I think. We've also had good success in terms of getting power purchase agreements from a number of different utilities and off-takers around the country. And as well, we have secured funding with our projects on a consistent basis and got them financed, and they're all up and operating. I'd like Mark Russell to come up for just a minute. The most recent thing that NRS has done is open an office here in town, and if you could just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Pat, for the opportunity. My name is Mark Russell. I have numerous years of experience in the utility business. Just recently, I worked for the Board of Public Utilities and Westar, building out transmission lines and substations. NRS asked me to come in and join their team. I'm so happy to be here. I will have a somewhat of a permanent presence down there in the office. I would love to, introduce myself and meet people. So please stop on by. I do apologize for our construction right in front, your beautiful city project and the streets. We'll have that done shortly, but find a way in, and I would be happy to talk.
About $23.8 billion in our private equity division and $11.8 billion in our real estate division. Next slide. Okay. So the Ares Infrastructure and Power Group, right now, this is the projects that we have physically worked on just in the continental United States, Hawaii, and in Alaska. And these vary from thermal assets, which is coal, natural gas, into biomass, other types of thermal assets, and into renewables as well. Okay. So the Ares Infrastructure Group, a lot of our greenfield or brand new construction projects that we have, they're scattered around the Northeast. Down into Florida. We've got several projects in California. We have 3 brand new wind assets that we're constructing currently in Texas and operating in Texas, and a couple of assets that are scattered throughout the Midwest as well. And as we start looking at some of the greenfield project experience, one of the reasons that I was brought here to actually talk to you tonight is a lot of it's based on my experience. So I'm actually an old farm kid, still a farmer. I actually still own land in Wisconsin. I own about 3,000 acres, 1,000 acres up in Wisconsin, 2,000 acres in Illinois. However, I met the love of my life, and she lived in Texas with her kids, so I now live in Texas. Still own all the land, still actively farm all that land. The other kind of unique part of it is I've been doing this for about 28 years, and I've built or managed over 28,000 megawatts worth of greenfield projects. So I understand this construction better than anybody else does. And the reason that we are here, and the reason that Ares is here, is to make sure that we treat your properties the way you would treat your properties. And to make sure that you understand that Ares is a long-term partner in this project, and we will be here for the next 30 years managing these projects, and making sure that we address all of the landowner concerns and that we address any other concern of the community as well. So we are your long-term partners, and we want nothing more than to see this project built and to see this income come into your community.
With that, I'd like to introduce Jesse Hopkins-Houle. Jesse's our senior developer. Those of you that are landowners, I think you know him well.
My name is Jesse Hopkins Hool. My address is 2001 Summit Drive, St. Cloud, Minnesota. I am the Vice President of Development at National Renewable Solutions, developer of Expedition Wind. As Sean stated, they have been involved in this project from the time that we have picked it up and started working on this schedule. And so I am working with Sean on a daily basis to kind of work through the elements that I'm about to go through here. So just a highlight of the milestones that we've already kind of gone through as a part of the project. As many of you know, Windborne had secured leases for the various Doyle projects from 2010 through 2015 during the CUP process and hearings. And at that time, or during that time, the CUPs were passed, and a Tier 1 environmental assessment was conducted in 2010, 14, and 15 updates. The CUPs were then confirmed again in February of 2015 with the Doyle groups. And then also approximately that time, in June of 2015, we signed a generation interconnection agreement with Westar Energy. And Mark Russell, who you've already seen, was actually the project manager at Westar at the time, who signed that, or helped us, secure that generation interconnection agreement. We began site characterization, or the Tier 2 environmental report in 18. Again, brought that through to the Tier 3, which is actual studies on site and characterization of those. We then acquired the Windborne assets. We completed that sale in June of 2018. Secured the financial partner with Sean and the Aries Group in also that same day, June of 18. Conditional use permits for 2 meteorological towers were filed in August. We went through that process, they were granted, then went to the wetland study, Expedition Wind leasing, completed in February of this year. Moving down, we've gotten FAA clearance for the site, secured the project office a couple of weeks ago at 230 East Main Street. What's that about? Moving through the schedule, essentially where we're at today is the bottom of that schedule was we've got the CUP process, which is pending, and then the ancillary agreements, which are also pending, which we expect to follow up this process immediately. The next area is our forward schedule. We've looked at all the things that we've done. Now we're just kind of moving forward into the final development pieces and then the construction pieces. And so if we look at our start, oh good, thank you guys. Where we are right now is we are in the process of getting our geotechnical bid work. Of course, when we get through this process, we want to hit the field and start inspecting the project to see where the potential locations that we've got identified, well, make sure that they match. Then we'll go through the ALTA survey process, obtain the local county building, assuming a successful CUP process, of course. And then start of civil construction would begin late summer, early fall of this year, which would carry us through to turbine equipment deliveries at the end of this year in December, but probably right before the end of this year. All right. Anyways, all of that leading to an operational project at the right in the late fall of 2020. To give you a sense of what we've kind of focused on since we came into the community and looked at how we were going to get this project done, we conducted 5 project landowner meetings and then countless individual meetings, of course, signing leases and addressing concerns and questions. Final sit-down meeting with landowners for planned infrastructure will occur after this process is complete, and we've kind of identified the final siting options for turbines and equipment. Regular communications, of course, with landowners, complete resolution process and form. We have established process should any landowner, community member have an issue with the project. There's a standard process that they will file the complaint and it'll be resolved within a certain amount of days, unless for some reason there's some extenuating circumstance for which they would be notified in a structured format. And then the landowner, contrary to what we may have heard from time to time, we've done the math, we've checked it, we've double checked it. We have approximately 70% of our landowners who are Marion County residents. 100% pay taxes in Marion County. Public officials engagement. We first approached the county commission in March of 2018, at which time we were introduced to the commission just as an introductory opportunity for us. And then further, we had individual sit-down meetings with 2 of the 3 county commissioners. Sadly, the 3rd county commissioner has not taken advantage of that opportunity, although it was offered a couple of times. Informational materials pertaining to the Expedition Wind Project were provided to all commissioners and the zoning director, including full public hearing in this room in March of 19 as well, March of this year. And then moving into the local business engagement, informational letters were sent out to the local businesses and leaders in the community, conversations with multiple landowners, businesses looking to contract with the project for work, and additionally us contracting with them to move through the development process and into the construction process for the project. And then we also sat down with all 4 local school districts and explained what we're here to do and addressed any concerns that they had. And then lastly, we will commit to a job fair as well as a contractor expo before construction starts, so that any local contractor or someone looking for work has an opportunity for sure to meet with the folks who are going to build the project. Are there any questions about community engagement that you all have? Okay. I'll move into the siting decisions evolution. Expedition Wind has taken really painstaking efforts in this process to not only provide a good project, but to provide the best project that Marion County has to date. We've excluded turbines in the northern portion of the footprint because of some FAA accommodations for a low fly route. We've improved the minimum annual payment to all participating landowners to $2,000 minimum. And additionally, this offer remains and will continue to remain, that we will offer $2,000 to any landowner within a half a mile of a turbine throughout the first year of operations. And I invite all landowners who are in that category to take advantage of that. Additionally, we excluded leases east of Highway 77 and south of Highway 50. We know that that's the tall grass heartland, and it has a moratorium, voluntary moratorium on it, so we have avoided that entirely. We've excluded turbine siting west of Mustang Road, despite having many leases signed west of there, and we will honor those, but all of our project assets, provided this is a successful process, will be within the east side of Mustang Road. Marion County siting, we have done just a side-by-side comparison. Essentially, Marion has, the regulations under the WEX right now provide for a turbine height plus 50 feet setback from all participating landowners. We start with a 1,500-foot standard setback from participating landowners as a normal course of business. Additionally, for non-participating was a quarter mile. We've increased that to 2,000 feet for all non-participating landowners within the project area. There's a 55 decibel setback, or a decibel limit from a landowner's property line. Of course, we will abide by that, but we've additionally added a 50 decibel limit to any exterior wall of any non-participating landowner within our project area. All said and done, really this allows for much more stringent siting than what was previously here. We're excited to provide it, and the next slides basically show kind of the evolution of the footprint and what happens during the setbacks process, and kind of getting back to our buildable land. What you saw at the very first slide, that was all of our signed leases in green. After we moved through setbacks from roads, pipelines, railroads, all of the above, we end up with a big mess, and we started with about 23,000 acres of leases with landowners who wanted to, project on their property. What we're left with after all those setbacks is approximately, it's less than 4,000 acres available to sign or to put turbines on. To give you a sense of what that represents today, as I said, we signed a generation interconnection agreement for 200.6 megawatts. That gives us, and that's an agreement with the utility. That is our threshold, that's our constraint. 200 megawatt project at this stage we've currently scoped GE turbines on the project, and given that circumstance, it's between 70 and 95 turbines, depending on what turbine we end up with and the turbine tip height of less than 500 feet. Now this can change, but those metrics will remain the same. Any questions on turbine siting? Okay, I'd like to introduce Eric Hansen on the environmental aspects.
Good evening. I'm Eric Hansen, Westwood Professional Services, 11530 52nd Avenue North in Plymouth, Minnesota. I've been working in wind industry for about 14 years and have been asked to run through some of the wildlife studies that have been done. Jesse's talked a little bit about some of the early studies. The Tier 1 process is a Fish and Wildlife established protocol to look at where sites can be placed with a minimum impact within a larger region. That's been completed and updated. We have moved through a Phase 1 environmental site assessment looking for potential contamination issues that pre-exist in the land. No problems were found. At this time, we've moved into Tier 2 and Tier 3, which again are Fish and Wildlife guidelines on additional background research into what endangered species are in the area from a research standpoint. There are really no critical habitats in this area. It's 50% cropland, about 37% grassland, and with an absence of significant habitat, there is an absence of listed species, either federally listed or state listed species, and that is based on field studies that have been performed within the last 12 months, both on the avian side during the full summer of 2018 and fall, and bat studies performed with acoustical equipment that records bat calls that was taken during the critical fall migration period last fall. There were no listed species observed during our field observations for the avian or vegetation side, we had 7 species of bats, including the Indiana bat was indicated through the acoustic monitoring, and we have adjusted the siting program to move away from some of the critical habitat that exists, which are basically the 3 streams that run through the area. Overall wetlands, less than 1% of the footprint is wetland. So it's very straightforward from a design standpoint to work around that habitat. We've also looked at cultural resources and performed a file search for known sites. And there are a few sites in the region. There are just a couple sites within the footprint in the development area, and those are easily avoided through design. So the wind farms have a unique ability, there's flexibility. They're spread out enough from a wildlife standpoint. This one has been designed to avoid and minimize impacts. Over the course of the years, my company at Westwood, we've worked on about 70% of the wind farms across the United States in one form or another. And as I look at it, I see this as a good project. Troy?
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Troy Bushman. I'm a project developer with Expedition. Expedition hired ComSearch, who is a wireless spectrum engineering firm, to do a communications system study in Marion. ComSearch studied the potential effects of the project on microwave beam paths, AM, FM stations, communication towers, and land mobile and emergency service communications. Those reports have been submitted as part of the CUP application, and they all conclude there are no anticipated impacts on communication systems by the project. Article 27 requires wind projects to address soil erosion and sediment control. Expedition has drafted a plan and submitted it as part of the CUP application. This plan addresses the industry's best management practices for reducing erosion and sediment during construction, and this plan exceeds compliance with the intent of Article 27-105. Are there any questions regarding communication or soil erosion?
Good evening. I'm Lindsay Ransom, Chief Operating Officer at National Renewable Solutions on behalf of Expedition Wind. I'm here to just give a brief overview of the actual contents of our application to be considered here today. This is an overview of the submittal contents, which include obviously the response to the articles required, as well as our project development plan, which is also up for consideration here as well. All of the attachments represent unprecedented amount of third-party research and reports that we had commissioned specifically for this project and our project area. In addition to that, the project was submitted, the application was submitted on May 3rd. Public notice was in the Marion County Record on May 8th. Personal notices were sent to all property owners within 1,000 feet of the proposed CUP zoning area on or before the 13th of May. And 20 physical signs were posted providing notice of the public hearing within the proposed CUP zoning area. We've included a number of attachments which were not necessarily required in the regulations, but we felt important to address specific concerns. For example, as Troy mentioned, the third-party review, the ComSearch study on the emergency radio systems was a concern that was raised, given that Marion County had recently installed those, and so we commissioned that study to ensure that they did not interfere with that. This slide represents basically the CUP areas for which we're asking consideration. The bright yellow represents those CUP requested zoning. To the east of the majority of the yellow represent the existing Doyle CUPs. The next slide basically represents our development plan, proposed development plan for consideration. This is, again, shows project infrastructure as proposed. As Jesse mentioned, we're a 200 megawatt project. This represents roughly 70 some turbines with the GE slated in this particular layout. But we're going to be under that 500-foot threshold as per the FAA requirements. As stated in Article 24-105, the Marion County Planning and Zoning Commission may recommend approval of conditional use permit, and the governing body may approve such conditional use permit using factors in Section 2, subpoints A through K as guidelines. For avoidance of doubt, I just want to state Expedition Wind will obtain every permit, clearance, or approval required to build the project. But with respect to our application, we've submitted an unprecedented amount of evidence to support our compliance with every provision in the outlined regulations. It should be further noted that the governing body has previously approved projects of similar size and scope under the same regulations and with much less information or stringent setbacks and health standards. A written response to how Expedition meets or exceeds each approval factor is being submitted into the record tonight. However, much of the content you've heard or will hear throughout the rest of this presentation will address these factors directly. Further, while you may hear some studies or reports being talked about later tonight about wind projects in general, we just want to state that we believe that the Commission should place particular emphasis on the third-party studies and reports that are specifically related to this project area. We've brought several experts and third-party people who have studied our project and can answer questions specifically related to our project. So, with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Olson.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Olson. I hold a PhD in environmental health and have been a consultant and professor in this area for the last 20 years. Specifically, if we go to the next slide, specifically in the last 10 years, I've been part of my research focus and consulting practices on environmental health and specifically citing wind projects to avoid health and safety concerns. So I'm going to take you through a brief overview. Expedition Wind asked me to comment on their project, review the setbacks and safety zones that they have both within your ordinance as well as what they implemented, and I'm going to walk you through why I believe it's a properly cited project. I've published 6 peer-reviewed papers in the scientific and medical literature in the field. Go to the next slide. So there are over 60,000 wind turbines located across the U.S. And in fact, we're going to talk about Kansas for a little bit. The vast majority are located in rural and cropland, sparsely and densely populated areas, and we're talking about proper siting to make sure that we avoid health impacts. Go to the next one. So we don't have to look any further than Kansas. Although there hasn't been any peer-reviewed studies necessarily done on Kansas itself or Kansas projects, first wind project in Kansas was built in 2001. We've got almost 20 years of operation in Kansas. As you can see, there's over 3,000 wind turbines across the state. Also locally here with the recently installed project that you folks approved earlier a couple of years ago. If there were widespread problems and concerns, county commissions, planning commissions would be hearing about it over that 20-year period. With that said, there are a number of scientific studies that have been conducted around the world. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We know that we're going to hear, and one of the reasons that Expedition Wind asked me to come and speak to you folks is that we know that people do have concerns over the sound they're going to be produced by the turbines, the shadow flicker, ice throw, uneventful occurrences. So we'll talk a little bit about how your safety and setbacks are good for those. Candidly, the reason we have noise limits and setback distances because unwanted noise and too much of it, whether it be a gas turbine, whether it be roadways and highways, airports, or wind turbines, if you're sited too close, if projects are too loud, it can lead to bad health outcomes for people living in the area. So let's go through what a proper siting looks like. So up here I happen to be from Canada. I'm from the Toronto area of Canada. I got the Health Canada study up here. The reason it's up here is not because I'm from Canada. It was the largest study that was commissioned around the world in 2014 by the Canadian government. So the Health Canada is the equivalent to the CDC here in the US. And what they did was an independent study, spent over $2.5 million researching this over 12 projects and over 1,200 people living around wind turbines. as close as 820 feet out to 7 miles, knowing that the setback to non-participating homes that we're looking at for the Expedition Wind project is 2,000 feet, and some of these turbines are located a lot closer. This was the first time. There's been a number of studies out of Europe, out of Australia, out of the UK, some here in the US, but for the first time they actually measured physical measures of health. So things like cortisol for stress levels. They actually put sleep meters on people and looked at weeks worth of sleep data to see whether or not wind projects were impacting health. This is extensively put into the medical and peer-reviewed literature, so all the findings are there and available, as well as the summaries. Go to the next one. Overall, this conclusion from their study, there's no evidence of an association between exposure to wind turbine noise, that's the WTN up there, prevalence of self-reported or the actual measured health effects, things like sleep disturbance and the like. And so the sound levels there were about the equivalent of 49 decibels, and they were set back again as close as 820 feet. Knowing that you were looking at a 50 decibel restriction here, and the sound report that you have in front of you is actually a little bit lower for non-participating homes, and we're going to be 2,000 feet out. It's consistent with proper siting. This is just briefly a slide out of one of the European studies from 2012, where all that table looks at is that for people living in the rural Netherlands, what percent were disturbed their sleep by the people and animal sound in rural areas, traffic and mechanical sound of wind turbines, about 24% from the existing landscape of living in rural Netherlands. It's very similar to here. It's farming operations, calf cowing, and the like, and only 6% by wind turbines. So there can be a little bit of disturbance, but again, well below that we already experience in rural America. Next slide. We'll likely hear about infrasound and low-frequency noise. This is something that your ordinance doesn't govern, nor do ordinances, either state or local or county ordinances across the U.S., Canada, and around the world, frankly. And so let's talk a little bit about low-frequency noise and infrasound, what we know from the science. Next, just keep banging through. Last one there, stop. So, yes, low-frequency noise and infrasound are emitted from turbines. If I shut up for a second, just the hum from the HVAC system, from the air conditioning system here, that kind of whirling sound, that's also low-frequency noise that is emitting infrasound. So it is emitted, but it's not emitted at a level that causes health concern. Next slide. So some of the international studies, again, we did some work here in the U.S. There's been work out of Texas, actually was the first paper in around 2011 on sound and low-frequency noise from turbines. This is one of the largest studies conducted around the world from a German state-sponsored study, where they have thousands of turbines in that German state. And what they concluded, if we go to the next slide, and they took measurements of infrasound. We're not going to go through this. I can go through it later if we need to on more Q&A. But essentially, what they concluded, what the peer-reviewed literature concludes, is that at about 1,000 feet from a wind turbine, we're well into this sort of background or level of infrasound that we have right here in the room and low frequency noise that you'd have in your home with and without the turbines on. And so as long as you have a proper A-weighted, or that dBA, so that 50 decibels at non-participating homes and that 2,000 foot setback, then we're going to be protective of people from infrasound and low frequency noise. Next. Shadow flicker. This used to be much more a concern when we sited turbines about 1,000 feet from people's homes. If you've got a turbine to the east of your home and to the west of your home, you might get some shadow flicker as the sun rises in the morning if you've got turbines to the east, and as it sets to the west. So what happened is with these larger setbacks of 2,000 feet or so, and then we start introducing standards, so county ordinances, common here, both in Kansas and across the Midwest, and some of the states like North Dakota, is no more than 30 hours total shadow flicker a year at people's homes. That's not to protect against health impacts, because there aren't health impacts. They don't trigger seizures. They don't do all these other things that we're concerned about. What it is basically to reduce the annoyance or nuisance for people who aren't participating. Less than 0.5% of the hours a year, again, early morning, and the project as modeled right now complies with that 30 hours. So some setbacks. This is the setback document from GE for their turbines. This was released in late 2018. What it says is that, consistent with the ordinance, in fact, entirely consistent with the ordinance, 1.1 times the tip height, so the total height of the turbines, to property lines, to structures, to protect against things like ice throw and blade failure, as well as then roadways and the like. So very consistent with the ordinance and how the project's being designed. So this is just some of the science that goes into the science, the ice throw for the next one. And essentially that we know that from various research facilities mostly in Northern Europe, where they've got lots of icing conditions, where they've actually stood there and measured in the field ice fragments thrown from the turbines, that they stay within that kind of 1.1 times tip height. These turbines aren't going to be any taller than 500 feet, and so that it stays within that 550 feet sort of zone with that 1.1 times tip height. Same thing with the blade fragment throw. This is a study out of the United Kingdom where the chance of actually being struck by blade fragment, if you were more or less ever present in the field as a farmer, is the same chance of actually being struck by lightning or your plane going down if you take 2 plane rides a year. Next one. Keep going. It's the same study. So from a health and safety perspective, the project complying with your ordinance and going even further with some of the setback distances and sound restrictions meets the test of a good sited project, very consistent with other Kansas counties and state regulations across the Midwest. Also, it's compatible with the livestock and hunting side of things. Again, 60,000 turbines across the U.S., most in agricultural areas, grazing, pasture land, and the like. We do not see issues with livestock, and certainly on hunting, we don't see decreased hunting rates of whether deer or the like when projects are installed. So in conclusion, what we're looking at here is there's been considerable amount of research done in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. As part of the package that you were handed earlier this evening, there is about a 17 or 18 page summary of all the stuff that I've taken you through here in the slides. Happy to discuss with the commission tonight more of the details, but I believe that with the 2,000 foot setback, 50 decibel sound limit, and the 30 hours of shadow flicker for nuisance, this is a properly sited project, and you will not experience health impacts or other concerns within the county residents if the project was to be built. Sure.
On the transmission lines, is there any study about what the health impact?
Yeah, certainly. So
They will be networked out there.
Absolutely. I didn't focus on the transmission lines, but back in 2014, myself and my research colleagues did a study specifically on the transmission lines specific to wind projects. I mean, it's no different than any other transmission line, whatever the electrons that are going to the side. The concern tends to revolve around EMF or electromagnetic fields. You could quite simply live right underneath the power lines and be well below any EMF guideline, hundreds if not 1,000 times. There was some earlier work back in the 70s that's been kind of discounted on leukemia and childhood cancers, but we see the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Center for Environmental Health Sciences here in the U.S. all have come to the same conclusion that there is not a health impact from living even in proximity to those power lines.
Thank you, Chris. Glad you guys all figured out all the technical part of all this now, so I can stand up and hopefully take advantage of it. One of the things that your WEX tells you that you should do is evaluate the overall county value of the project. And to that end, we went, you've got a very respected university here, Fort Hays University. We went to Fort Hays to establish what that value would be based upon our project. And I've got a gentleman up here that will walk you through that, but let me set the stage for you just a little bit in terms of where we are today and what there is to gain. Median income, $39,220, fully 12 to 15% below the state average, 20% below the national average. Marion County population has declined for almost 100 years. Every census since 1920, population's gone down. It's gone from 22,923 to an estimated 11,950, 2018. Median age in Marion County in 2000 was 41.2. It's now 45.9. And we all know what's happened with farm income the last 5 or 6 years. If we can find some valuable ways to add a little push to this economy, I think that's good for everybody. It's not just good for just our landowners. I think it's good for everybody in this room. So with that, Preston, I'd like you to come up and address your study.
Thank you, Pat. My name is Preston Gilson. I'm a professor emeritus from Fort Hays. I'm a senior policy fellow at the Docking Institute, and my address is P.O. Box 883 in El Dorado, just down the road. Good evening. Thank you for letting me be part of your discussion about the future in Marion County. The primary mission of the Fort Hays State Docking Institute of Public Affairs is to facilitate effective public policy decision-making, and that's what you're about. Our goal with this research is to provide you an accurate and unbiased estimate of the expected economic impact of a 200 megawatt electric generation wind farm on Marion County. So, before we get into the results, I would like to tell you something about how I go about doing this stuff. Input-output analysis is a methodology that started in the 19th century, but in the 20th century, a man named Wassily Leontief, he was born in 1906, a few years after my grandmother, and he died in 1999. Nothing special about him, I suppose. He taught at Harvard. In 1973, he won the Nobel Prize in economics. And he won it because of his theoretical and his practical work in input-output analysis. Now, if you farm, you know about input-output analysis because you don't just drop a few grains of corn into the furrows, but you've got to put everything else in there as well, like some fertilizer. And you've got to harvest it. And you've got to sell it. So that's what input-output analysis does. It looks at what does it take to do this and what happens after we've done it. And it looks at the relationships between how I do something and how that affects you. So if I buy a new tractor and you're in a tractor selling business, that's good. So, input-output analysis was really hard to do until about 40 years ago when the U.S. Forest Service decided that they would like to have something called IMPLAN. And because we happen to have computers at about the same time, they actually could make this work. They built basically large databases and spreadsheets, and of course the USDA has lots of information that they collect. They put all that together and they had something that really worked. Initially it was an in-house product. You were with the USDA and you could use it, but nobody else could. Eventually it was used just by the US government. Eventually after that it became semi-privatized, then it became fully privatized. It's now the premier software and data package to use for doing this kind of analysis. It's used by the US government, by state governments, by academic researchers, by economic developers, and by public policy planners throughout the world. So, let's look at the results of what we did. The project has two distinct phases, and it has two perspectives. The first thing that we're going to consider is the private sector of the economy, and we're going to look at the construction phase. Now, the construction phase is labor-intensive and very short. Well, relatively short. So, we only considered the direct impact that came from the portion of the payroll of the workers that we think is likely to be spent locally. Most of these workers who are not from here are going to send their money home. They're not going to spend it here, but they're going to spend some money here, and that's what we looked at. So that's the direct impact. Then we looked at secondary effects, which are spending that occurs between businesses because some business made some money and they bought something else from another business, and there's going to be gravel and concrete and all sorts of stuff. And then there is an induced effect, which is the result of additional employee spending by businesses. So the total impact on the construction phase, on the private sector, is about 7 million plus. Okay? So let's look at what happens after the thing is built, the operational phase. Now, the operational phase is capital intensive. Those little turbines that you see on the horizon don't come cheap. And it's very long. This is a 30-year project. Here, the direct economic impact comes from land lease payments and from operational payroll. Again, the secondary effects are additional spending by businesses and employees, the indirect and the induced. In this phase, the total economic impact is about $105 million, a little bit over. Then we can turn from the public sector, or the private sector, to the public sector. And the public sector has impacts as well. The construction phase, again, is still labor intensive. There's going to be all those people. What we chose to do here was only look at sales tax. Now, there are a number of different communities that collect sales tax, and the county collects the sales tax. We did not include the state's portion of the sales tax. They'll still get it. The impact from all of that, and we anticipate that they will spend money here and they will pay taxes, is about $99,000. Not a lot of money, but it's more than zero. So, now we've got a 30-year operational phase. What's happening here? Well, the direct impact is going to consist of payments in lieu of taxes, because for the first 10 years there's an abatement. There's going to be property taxes, and there will be some sales taxes. We didn't include income taxes and things like that, because that's at the state level. The impact here is about $30 million. So we could add all of this up, and that would be a nice thing to do, and it comes up to about $143 million. Now, that's an increase in economic activity. Furthermore, because what we're talking about is an industry that uses long-term contracts, these revenue flows aren't going to go up and down depending upon what somebody says in a Twitter feed. Okay? So, there's a decrease in riskiness. More money, a higher return, and lower risk. If you talk to the guys who are behind this thing on the financial side, they love that sort of thing, and you should too. So, I guess what I would say is, thanks. Thanks for your involvement in the process, and after a while, if you have some questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Preston. One final issue, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I know property value is a big issue. Let me remind everybody that the best thing about the property value is, as soon as we put up 74 turbines and start paying the money to the landowners, their property value goes up, right? Because of the income associated with it. But I know some of you around here are concerned that adjacent property may have a problem with dropping values. The Reno County assessor did, I think, one of the best studies that I've seen. We've provided 4 other reports as well, but she contacted, I believe it was she, 24 counties with wind farms. 23 of them returned her phone calls and followed up the information. None of those 23, since 2001, have reduced any property values adjacent to the wind farms. Now that's their job, is to evaluate that. So we're going to wrap up. We run real hard for an hour. I hope we've gotten a lot of good information to you. I know we're rapidly getting to the end. But first of all, I want to thank our landowners that are here. I don't know, 40, 50, 60 of them. Took some guts for a lot of these people to show up. They've been at this a long time, and they really believe that it is the time to do this. When the county sets a standard for zoning, sets up CUPs, and works through the process the way these people have, there's an expectation that you should move forward. And those landowners have had that expectation for a number of years. And it's plain and simply, it's time we get on with the business. The other point that I would make, and similar to, I think, Chris making the same point, we're going to hear a lot of things about wind farms. Hope you've heard some good today. I'm sure you'll hear some bad in terms of some of the things that people are willing to say. But the industry's been around for about 20 years. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of turbines. The impacts are not nearly as serious as what you see. And you're already seeing that up in Diamond Vista. That was built, it was approved and built. And sure, there was some problem with the roads. Sure, there were a few people that didn't like it. But less and less of that concern and furor is out in the marketplace. And that's traditionally what you see with a project like this. These people that have signed leases with Doyle have waited a long time. We now have a project that's viable. We put it together, we think, in the right way. We put it together in careful consideration of the zoning ordinance. We would ask that Planning and Zoning Commission support us in that action. Now we may have a few minutes if you'd like. I know we've got some pretty talented people here, and we can answer questions if you'd like.
Does anybody have any questions from the board? Maybe not right now. I think for now we're good. Thank you. I believe the next order of business will be Sharon.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, is that better? Okay, I'll proceed with the staff report. The Planning Commission has been provided the staff report in advance of the meeting, so they have a copy of it in front of them. I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'll spare you all that. However, there are some points I would like to point out, and then we can carry on with that discussion. So this application is designed to be a companion CUP with the approved and existing Doyle Wind Project numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and A in their accompanying resolutions in order to optimize its overall footprint as shown in the submitted development plan. If you turn to page 2, please. The project footprint encompasses about 20,000 acres of land located in south central Marion County. The layout is not final, but it is representative of the spacing and quantity of turbines. The project substation is planned to be in the northeast quarter of Section 13, Township 21 South, Range 3 East. This portion of ground is also anticipated to host the construction laydown yard, batch plant, and potentially the operations and maintenance or O&M facility. Expedition is contemplating the use of an existing building within the city of Marion for the O&M building. Underground electrical collection lines will run from and between turbines into the collection substation. Power at the substation will then be stepped up from 34.5 kilovolts to 345 kilovolts to match the existing Westar substation system. And the overhead transmission line will run from the substation along private lands and existing rights-of-way along Highway 77 to south of Burns and continuing into Butler County to the interconnection point. At the point of interconnection, a 345 kilovolt switching station will inject the project's energy into the electric grid as laid out in the generation interconnection agreement and agreed by Westar Energy. The Marion County zoning regulations define a WEX as an electrical generating facility that operates by converting the kinetic energy of wind into electrical energy and is comprised of one or more wind turbines and accessory facilities, including but not limited to ancillary operational met towers, overhead and underground communication and electrical transmission lines, transformers, substations, roads, administrative and operations buildings, turbines, supervisory control and data acquisition facilities, and other associated facilities. The energy may be used on-site or distributed into the electrical grid. Staff notes that the development plan submitted by the applicant as amended includes property for transmission lines that is part of the KDOT right-of-way, but is not within the existing CUP or the CUP application. If you go down to the bottom of page 2, Marion County zoning regulations contain 3 sections that deal with submittal requirements for a conditional use permit request. The first section requires that a development plan be included with the application. The standards for the submittal of a development plan are outlined in Article 12. Those are listed out. I'm going to skip to page 4. Noting that there will be significant impacts to the county's roads. That is anticipated with the development of a project of this magnitude. A road maintenance agreement is a required condition for WEX projects before construction may begin and is further addressed in Article 27. Concern of interference with area communication equipment has been addressed by the applicant. A report generated by ComSearch is included with the application packet. And Expedition has submitted a draft road use and maintenance agreement for the consideration should the CUP be approved. If you skip over to page 5, item H. It is the opinion of staff that the proposed use would adhere to the intent of the comprehensive plan. It should be noted the plan was developed with substantial consideration given to WEX projects in particular, and the appropriate level of regulation of such land uses the county felt was reasonable. This application is consistent with the objectives of that discussion. The plan leaves the siting of such facilities up to the marketplace and developers while retaining the ability to impose conditions upon these facilities in an effort to mitigate any potential impacts. Staff believes with the inclusion of appropriate conditions, approval of this project would achieve the goals of the plan while protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. On item I, specific areas of concern are addressed in detail in Article 27. It is the opinion of staff that these concerns do not outweigh the value of the proposed development to the applicants and participating property owners. There is not substantial evidence prior to the public hearing as to whether the concerns outweigh the value of the proposed development for adjacent non-participating landowners and the county as a whole. Page 6. Item J. The project area is primarily agricultural in nature. As with any relatively new land use, attitudes towards WEX facilities can vary significantly. Upon a review of relevant research related to commonly claimed impacts on area properties by these developments, draws no definitive conclusions that they negatively influence property values, create health issues, or are a safety concern. In the absence of any nationally accepted standards of mitigation beyond what is recognized in the Marion County zoning regulations and by the Marion County Planning Commission or governing body, staff is of the opinion this land use is appropriate with this portion of the county. Specific requirements recommended by the Planning Commission or governing body are intended to further ensure safety and compatibility of this land use with those in the area. Page 7, addressing item number 2. Expedition acknowledges the county's regulation intends to incorporate conservative or greater setbacks to ensure satisfactory siting of project infrastructure with local permitting authorities, state agencies, and landowners. The submitted development plan includes turbine sites at 2,000 plus feet from non-participating residences. It is the opinion of staff that the setbacks from turbine towers should be regulated from property boundaries, not structures. Regulating from structures may inhibit future development of a non-participating property and therefore infringe upon non-participant land rights. Page 8, concerning lighting. Lights beyond the minimum requirement are not recommended in order to prevent potential disturbances to surrounding property owners. It is staff's opinion that the use of proximity sensor lighting or radar-based obstruction light control be used on those towers where lighting is required by FAA standards. Skipping over to page 9, item 10, I would like to address the point. Decommissioning is addressed in the private lease agreements between the applicant and the property owners. However, it is the opinion of staff that an agreement between the applicant and Marion County shall be in place prior to commencement of construction. Expedition has provided a draft decommissioning agreement with the application packet. Okay, with that, if you'll turn to page 13. There are some special conditions that I would like to recommend to the Planning Commission should the CUP be approved. Filing and maintaining with the Marion County Zoning Administrator a current FAA determination of a no hazard or air navigation letter verifying that each wind turbine in the project area, when constructed in accordance with the construction plan, is not and will not constitute a hazard to aircraft. Where required by FAA, only proximity sensor lighting or radar-based obstruction light control be installed on turbine towers, and no lighting shall be illuminated on a wind turbine that does not require lighting by FAA standards. Written certification by a licensed and qualified professional engineer approved by Marion County verifying compliance with all setback requirements. An agreement to adequately compensate Marion County for governmental services and for impacts related to the project. An agreement to adequately compensate Marion County for any necessary upgrades to the existing 911 emergency radio system as a result of the impacts of the project's turbine array. All of the above referenced agreements in content and form acceptable to Marion County in its sole discretion shall be executed within 120 days following the adoption of a county resolution approving a conditional use permit, or failure to do so render the conditional use permit null and void. No wind turbine shall interfere with the transmission or receiving capabilities of any public or emergency telecommunication tower or device, including weather radars. Any interference shall be mitigated by Expedition Wind LLC at its expense. Disturbance limits shall be indicated on the construction site plan. Due to the unforeseen circumstances, each wind turbine location at as shown on the submitted construction site plan may be permitted to a relocated location no farther than the noted disturbance limit without the need for additional conditional use permit review. The owner shall submit an amended zoning permit application, and each relocated wind turbine will be required to comply with all conditions of approval. Concerning setbacks from a turbine tower to a non-participating property boundary line, I would like for the Planning Commission to consider a condition regulating that from property boundary lines. All substation operations and maintenance buildings, laydown yards, and temporary improvements also from non-participating property lines, as to not have substantial disturbances adjacent to non-participating properties. Providing and maintaining throughout the life of the project an indemnification agreement with Marion County and a policy of general liability insurance with policy limits satisfactory to the Board of County Commissioners, which identifies Marion County as an additional insured. If the ownership of the WEX transfers fully or in part, notification of such transfer and acknowledgement by the new owner of compliance obligations shall be provided to the Marion County Zoning Administrator and the Marion County Clerk. Contact information for any such new owner shall also be provided to the Zoning Administrator and County Clerk. And I'm not giving a recommended course of action yet until all of the evidence has been provided. We've heard from Expedition Wind, and I think it's fair to hear from the other participants and Expedition's response to that before making a decision.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Does any board member have any questions for Sharon right now? If not, I think before we open public comment, we're going to take a brief recess. So let's say in 10 minutes, let's make it, in 10 minutes, 8:38, we'll resume the meeting. We're calling this meeting back to order. Case number PC-19-01, an application of wind energy conversion systems filed by Expedition Wind. At this time, before I open the public comment, I'm going to kind of go through our process and what our plan is again. Each person that comes up, if they'll state their name and address, and if you reside within the footprint of the application area, you will have 5 minutes to speak. If you come up as a group, you will have 5 minutes each to speak. I know we have some of that planned. Your time will start after you give your name and address. You will have one opportunity to speak. You should address your comments to the commission, to the board up here, and not to the applicant in the audience. Our plan for speaking, which I realize there's a lot of people signed up, but it's going to be I guess I'll call it first come, first serve. Everybody's going to get their chance. We will not cut anybody short. So the way we ask is to come up, sign your name and address. We have a staging area. If there's a chair available, you may take it, and you will be next in line to speak. So I ask, like I said, everybody will have their chance, so we don't need everybody running up there. Just be kind and courteous, and we'll get through this. So I will open the the public comment? I think we have one first in line.
Good evening to the board members of Marion County Planning Commission.
You'll have to hold it real close.
Okay. Good evening to the board members of the Marion County Planning Commission. We are Joel and Dawn Suderman, residing at 1337 Old Mill Road, Marion, Kansas. We live in Wilson Township, near the community of Olney. Our farm where we live has been owned by our family, my grandparents, parents, and ourselves for 85 years. We have leased our property to Expedition Wind LLC and are in the footprint, and we are in favor of approval of the conditional use permit to construct the wind farm. Our good friend Clifford Hett has often challenged me with this question: what is an opportunity? We are asking the board to consider this question as they deliberate the CUP application before them. Some opportunities turn out to be a boondoggle. Some opportunities may have negligible effects one way or the other with the outcome. And some opportunities are golden, reaping huge benefits for those who take the risk. I enjoy discovering the rich history of this county that my family has called home for 145 years. With access to the internet and a subscription to newspapers.com, one can find much history in the old newspapers of Marion County. How many of you knew that 130 years ago, Marion County was home to a silk factory at Peabody? At some point, someone had the idea that Kansas would be an ideal place to grow silkworms and produce silk fabric. The state legislature appropriated $15,000 and the silk factory was constructed at Peabody. In hindsight, this appears to have been a boondoggle. I have heard reports that the factory produced quality fabric, but it was limited in its market access. Another opinion, which I read in a Peabody newspaper, was that the factory did not even produce enough silk thread to sew a button on a shirt. The effort was ultimately abandoned and the building sat empty. Now let me tell you about an effort by the Mennonite Brethren Church Conference. Some of you may not recognize the difference between what we call Mennonites and Mennonite Brethren. To those of us who are familiar with these two denominations, there are some unique distinctives to each group. In 1887, the General Conference Mennonites started Bethel College at North Newton, Kansas. However, young people from the Mennonite Brethren denomination, often called the MBs, did not utilize Bethel College. Instead, many of the MB young people attended McPherson College, feeling that the education acquired at McPherson was more in line with MB doctrine and practice. However, in the early 1900s, there was a growing desire among the Mennonite Brethren to establish their own college. There are reports in a Peabody newspaper that in the fall of 1900, a committee of the Mennonite Brethren sought to find a location to establish a college, a printing office to print their own Sunday school materials and denominational newspaper, and also a hospital. It was proposed and promoted by some of the leaders of Peabody, as well as the editor of the Peabody News, that the abandoned silk factory property would be an ideal location for this grand endeavor. In the following edition of the Peabody News, there was a lengthy letter from an area resident. He wrote, and I quote, "It sounds well and looks nice on paper, but let us look this matter over a little before we bite. People will say it is good to have such institutions and that it will enhance the value of our property. Perhaps it might in the town, but I do not think the farmers as a class would be benefited. Some will say it will give us a better home market. Now, if this business meant 500 or 1,000 people from some far-off place, perhaps it would be a good thing for us. But all of those in connection with this institution will come from a short distance." End quote. The writer goes on to say that the prosperity of a town is due to the success of the farmer. And for rural communities such as we have in Marion County, we wholeheartedly agree with that statement. However, we believe it is risky to rely only on one industry to maintain the success of a town or a county as a whole. What if that one industry falters, as agriculture did in the 1980s and has again been in the downturn these last several years? While agriculture is the backbone of the Marion County economy, we believe it is prudent to spread the risk to seek multiple options for maintaining success and growth. The writer of that newspaper letter to the editor then goes on to propose converting the silk factory into a woolen factory to produce a value-added product to benefit the many area sheep farmers. Now, as for opportunities, why should we be limited to only one option? Whether it be a college, a hospital, a woolen factory, or innovative ways to produce food and fiber from the soil beneath our feet, or other opportunities such as harnessing the wind above our heads to produce electric energy, we ought to do our research, consider the economics, weigh the benefits and risks, and take advantage of any and every wholesome, honest, and decent opportunity that presents itself. Because of various circumstances, an MB-sponsored college did not come to fruition at that time, and there are no more reports of enticements to bring a college, printing office, or hospital to Peabody. I think I've about used my 5 minutes, and so I'm going to ask my wife, Dawn, to continue our comments to the board.
Good evening. I'm Dawn Suderman. I reside at 1337 Old Mill Road with my husband, Joel. Continuing our comments. Now jump ahead by 7 years. In 1908, the Mennonite Brethren again sought to build their own college. Only this time, no mention was made of Peabody as a considered site for this new MB-sponsored college. Instead, Hillsborough, Olney, Lehigh, and Inman were each considered as possible locations. I don't know what inducements were provided by these 4 towns, but we know that Hillsborough was chosen as the site for Tabor College. Was that a good opportunity for Hillsborough? Tabor is now the largest employer in Marion County. Each year, more than 500 students take classes at the Hillsborough campus, contributing to the economy of that town and to all of Marion County. However, let's take a realistic look at the whole situation. Through the years, the college has faced periods of financial woes. Then there are the occasional shenanigans of a few students for whom obtaining an education seems to be secondary. Their misdirected antics are sometimes reported in the local newspapers, especially when their pranks cross the line to become criminal complaints. But was it worth the risk to bring this opportunity to Hillsborough? Have the benefits outweighed any inconvenience caused by periods of shortfalls in financial donations or the rowdiness of some of the students? What if Peabody had been successful in bringing a college or a printing office or a hospital to its town? We'll never know what Peabody will have become had they continued to strive for those opportunities, but we do know that Peabody is only a shadow of what it was 100 years ago. Lehigh is also a dwindling community with only a few businesses on Main Street. Olney may have enthusiasm as evidenced by the turnout for the annual 4th of July celebration, but it doesn't even merit a state highway leading to this small community which no longer has any commercial businesses to bless this town. Only one town could be the winner of the opportunity to host Tabor College, but is the fact that Tabor College did not locate in Lehigh or Olney the reason for their decline over the last 100 years? Every community, every town, and every county must consider and take advantage of any positive, valuable, and beneficial opportunity that presents itself. Failure to do so will only result in a diminished economy and dwindling prospects for growth. The Expedition Wind Farm is not a college. It won't attract hundreds of young people to the county for 9 months out of every year. It won't become the largest employer in Marion County. However, Expedition Wind is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to provide cash payments to those who have leased the land to the wind farm. It's an opportunity to bring commerce to Marion, Peabody, Florence, and Hillsborough businesses by the workers who will be in this area for construction of the wind farm. It will provide sales tax revenue to these cities and to our county by Expedition officials and the construction company and its employees as they take lodging and meals and buy personal items and supplies while they work here. Expedition Wind will provide a dozen more permanent jobs for those who maintain the wind farm once it's in operation. So again, we urge you to consider the question, what is an opportunity? And with that question, there's a companion question. If this isn't an opportunity worth pursuing, then what opportunities will provide what we forfeit in passing by this one? What opportunities will present themselves to provide landowners with an estimated $500,000 annually in lease payments? What opportunities will provide additional funding for our schools? What opportunities will provide additional tax revenue for the county coffers or payments in lieu of taxes? What opportunities will have an estimated $143 million economic benefit to Marion County over the next 50 years? Opportunities must be seized when they present themselves. Marion County has already shrunk significantly from where it was a century ago. Failure to seize an opportunity such as this suggests we are satisfied with the status quo, which means we will continue to be a dwindling county with further dwindling communities. We urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to seize this opportunity and recommend to the County Commission to approve the conditional use permit to make the Expedition Wind Farm a reality. Thank you for hearing and considering our comments.
Thank you. I left one thing out. We do, for our benefit as well as yours, we have a timer. She will raise her hand at 4.5 minutes and stand at 5. And we just ask if she is standing, just to wrap your comments up. Thank you. She's right up here in the front row.
My name is Brian Stuckey. I live at 309 South Church Street in Gossel. I don't reside in the footprint, but I may someday. I have some questions. These are things I don't quite understand. Number one, the company went real fast on a cultural slide. I'm curious if the wind company has contacted the Kansas State Historical Society about historical sites, archaeological sites, such as Indian campsite locations, and if has anything been done to avoid them. If not, why not? I contacted a staff archaeologist there. He said there are a few recorded archaeological sites within the boundaries of the project as I forwarded the map to him. He said if the Expedition Wind Farm developers choose to work with us, we will be happy to share those locations and discuss ways to minimize impacts to cultural resources. We wouldn't want to, knowingly or unknowingly, tear up a 500 or 1,000-year-old archaeological site, would we? So I would urge the Expedition Wind Company to work with the State Historical Society to make sure to avoid the sites. Number two, I'm also curious if the Expedition Wind project planners have completed a visual impact assessment. If not, why not? There's a document from the Bureau of Land Management and National Park Service called Guide to Evaluating Visual Impact Assessments for Renewable Energy Project. This goes way beyond whether you like or don't like to look at the pretty windmills. This is a study based on scientific standards. To do such a visual impact assessment might help understand if, how, and why there are those who are opposing this project. To do such a visual impact assessment would make things easier for everybody. Next question I have for Planning and Zoning Board is, what is the local public benefit of these wind projects for Marion County? Yes, the company benefits. Yes, individual landowners benefit. But how does the public benefit anything at all? For example, the reservoir had immediate public benefit from flood control, then ongoing public benefit in recreation, boating, fishing, swimming, camping. But in this case, it seems to me the benefit is zero, unless somebody can correct me. I understand there isn't even any tax benefit for schools, towns, or county because of tax abatements for 10 years. 10 years. And if I understand correctly, the company can depreciate the towers, so they will, on paper, be worth nothing. That's not taxable at all. So if there's no local public benefit, then why would this project be going forward? Number four, now for some very serious questions. McPherson County is considering a huge wind turbine project. Galva residents in that area have told me that the county just put in a multi-million-dollar 911 system. Their wind project is on hold or a moratorium until they study the possible interference with the 911 system. Now, the company's slide on communications mentioned a lot of things, but did not specifically mention the 911 system. Now we're talking life and death with fire, ambulance, law enforcement communications. No one wants to have a heart attack and then the ambulance can't find you because of garbled radio signals. I think this needs much more study and answers. Number five, the other life and death issue is that of confirmed interference with Doppler weather radar. There is a video news report available on the internet where Cake TV reporter Pilar Pedraza interviewed meteorologist Jay Prater about this interference, and he said yes. He showed on the screen the hot spots where the wind farms are located. So even the meteorologists have to make a judgment call, is there really a tornado coming, or if it's just a wind farm? Do we want that kind of risk anywhere in Marion County? So if the Planning and Zoning Board has a mandate to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Marion County, how can you ignore the Cake TV Doppler radar report? If you want the website link, I have it for you. Thank you.
Yeah, just Sharon. Just a second, we'll get them.
Thank you. That's great, thank you. My name is Lisa Hoffman. The photographs I'm sharing with you tonight are photos I've taken on our Marion County property. As you can see, we have a family of wild turkeys. Next photo, please. Here is an eastern meadowlark. We also have western meadowlarks on our property, the state bird. This next picture, the eastern bluebird is eating a cricket, helping to control the insect population. Next picture is a Carolina wren, also an insect eater. Next, we have a Baltimore oriole, and then we have an indigo bunting. All of these birds are found on our property. All of these birds build nests and raise families on our Marion County farm. Bird species are an indicator of environmental health. The greater the diversity, the healthier the environment. You might have noticed in cities like Wichita or Kansas City, in the downtown cement areas, you might have seen European house sparrows, grackles, European starlings, and rock pigeons. Beginning December 2018, I have documented 110 bird species on our 80 acres. Next photo, please. These birds include 5 species of woodpeckers, including this red-headed woodpecker, 17 species of native sparrows, including this lark sparrow, and the clay-colored sparrow pictured here, and the white-crowned sparrow. Next photo, please. We also have 7 species of warblers that have visited our place. Warblers are tiny and hard to capture in photographs, so you can see my blurry photo on the right, and thanks to Ryan Shane for the photo on the left. We also have had American redstarts, another warbler species. Again, thanks to Evan Lipton for his nice photo there. My photo's on the right. This is a northern parula, a tiny warbler of about 4 inches long. It feeds high up in the trees, and I felt lucky to get both of these photographs. On the right, you can see that tiny northern parula stretching up to help eat those insects, control that insect population. One more warbler here out of the 7 that we've seen. This is a Blackburnian warbler. I could only get a photo from the bottom, and it's a blurry one, but that sure is a Blackburnian warbler, and you get to see the beautiful bird thanks to Ryan Shane with his black triangle on his face. These warblers were passing through as migrants, as was the Swainson thrush that you see next. And when Jim and I were in Oregon last year, we could hear the Swainson thrush songs echoing throughout the forest, and that's in Oregon. This bird may travel to Oregon, or it may travel to Canada and live and breed there. Next photo. Finally, you see blue-winged teals. Normally on our farm, they reside in our creeks. Well, due to flooded fields, they found a pool in our field between the road and the driveway. And I think they had a neighborhood pool party and invited their friends, because for a couple days we had 27 blue-winged teal in our field. At our Marion County home, Jim and I have begun some projects to help support wildlife. We have created a prairie garden in our yard with native plants to give pollinators habitat and food sources. We've also planted 30 acres in native grass to provide critical habitat for native bird and wildlife species that are in decline in grasslands. A windmill site would impact migrants like bald eagles that we have seen fly through our fields, warblers, and blue-winged teal. The windmills would lower the quality of nesting habitat for wild turkeys, great horned owls, and indigo buntings. In turn, county citizens would be negatively impacted. We do not want industrial windmills in this area. We hope that you use careful consideration and choose to protect the true treasures in this county, the wildlife and its citizens, for generations to come. Tonight I've heard that windmills, I've heard talk of 30 years, and really 30 years is nothing if that's what we're looking at. Thank you for your time and for your consideration.
I'll ask you for just a second, and we can turn the lights back up if you'd prefer. You don't have a presentation?
Pardon?
Do you have a presentation? Just speaking?
I'm Gilbert or Gibb Suderman, 216 South Madison, Hillsborough, Kansas. Own property in the grid, of which you're showing us tonight on the yellow. We're hoping for a tower on our property. Don't know if we'll get it or not, but that's one of the reasons it's a possible not is my neighbor to the west and my neighbor to the south are not in the grid, and therefore they are probably with this new setback they put, I probably won't get a tower. But also, some interesting facts that 36% of the power used in Kansas at this time is wind generated. We have 3 school districts that are in the grid: Hillsborough, Peabody, and Marion. $6.5 million will go to those schools. That's going. $16 million of personal property tax will be generated. So I'm for the windmills, and I would like to see you go ahead and approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Troy Weeby. I live on 962 Mustang in Peabody. Both my land and my home are adjacent to the footprint of the Expedition Wind. I got a call from my brother here a while back. He was a crop duster, and he asked me if I had signed my lease yet. And I told him I hadn't decided yet what I was going to do, and he proceeded to give me his opinion of it. He's not a fan of it, as you can probably guess, being a crop duster. They fly, 20 feet off the ground. They take a half mile to 3/4 mile to turn around at the end of their run. And so having a tower in that distance can pose a problem. This last summer, he crashed his plane and there wasn't even a tower around, so he doesn't have a chance if there's towers. And the other thing that he worries about is the wind shadow. These towers supposedly, I guess, can throw a wind gust a mile downstream, and he can feel that in his plane when he's flying. And so yeah, it's just a safety concern that I have for him until I get a life insurance policy on him. The other thing is that his company, they charge an extra $1 per acre to fly. If there's a tower within a half mile of the field they're flying, they'll charge an extra $1. So even though I forced them to give me a cheap brotherly rate, that still can add up over if it's a 50-year lease, that can still add up. So anyhow, I'd encourage you guys to look at making that setback up to a half-mile away from the property line for crop duster safety, and yeah, just for all our well-being as well. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Becky Yoder. I live at 1259 90th Peabody. We are 1 mile west of Mustang, which is part of the footprint. And what I'd like to do is thank all of you, the Planning and Zoning Board of Directors, and Sharon for all your hard work, time, and effort that you've all put into this extremely tough, difficult situation facing the residents of Marion County. Again, my name is Becky Yoder. My husband, Evan, and I are the fourth generation husband and wife team to own and operate our farm located in East Branch. The land was purchased in 1904 by Evan's great-grandfather, Aaron Yoder. Our 4 sons, the 5th generation Yoders, were born and raised on our farm. We now have the 6th generation, our son Jacob and his wife Riley, and their children, Riker and Tannen, living on the property. And again, you folks have a very important job protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Marion County. I can stand here before you and cite a plethora of research information on a host of health and safety issues concerning found from living in close proximity to a wind turbine, such as wind and Expedition Wind addressed some of these things. Wind turbine syndrome that affects the vestibular system, disturbs sleep, causes headaches, tinnitus, nervousness, rapid heart rate, stress, anger, to name a few. Low frequency sounds, and these are sounds that are felt and not heard. Ice throw. Ice that accumulates on the blades can be shed by falling off the blades. The falling ice may cause damage to structures and vehicles or persons in the path. Or the ice on the rotating blades can be thrown several hundred meters. Debris throw is when pieces of the blades weighing tons are detached and thrown close to a half mile or more. Shadow flicker is the effect of the sun shining through the rotating blades of the turbine, casting a moving shadow. Is perceived as a flicker due to the rotating blades. Stray voltage caused by miles and miles of the underground transmission lines that have to be laid. Red blinking navigational lights on top of the towers seen for miles around. I can go on and on. Whether you believe the research or not, all of these things can be annoying and cause stress. And stress does negatively affect health. These health and safety effects should not be trivialized or ignored. Let this information serve as a warning sign. We all know the wind industry is in its infancy compared to that other gas and oil. If this information and research about health and safety problems caused by close location of wind turbines to people that we are seeing today was known by the governing bodies and the wind industry in the beginning, many of and most of these health-related effects could be avoided. Instead of advocating caution in wind turbine placement near people, there has been a rush for renewable energy, which has been accelerated by the Federal Renewable Electricity Production Tax Credit, which is an inflation-adjusted per kilowatt hour for electricity generated by qualified energy resources. Wind farms qualify for this tax. This expires December 31st of 2019. I'm sure you've all heard of multi-billionaire Warren Buffett, world-famous owner of Berkshire Hathaway and Mid-American Energy, which is one of the largest wind farms in Iowa. Buffett stated, on wind energy, we get a tax credit if we build a lot of wind farms. That's the only reason to build them. They don't make sense without the tax credit. Let us all take heed. These health and safety effects should not be trivialized or ignored. The results could last for generations to come. So to Sharon and all the members of the planning and board, your job protecting the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of Marion County is tough and an extremely important one. So take heed, my friends, take heed. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm James Olson. I live at 1126 Quail Creek and in Peabody, Kansas. I own land in the footprint and I live there. Okay. Like many people, change is hard for me, but sometimes change brings opportunity with it. This project brings opportunity for new jobs, increased revenue for local businesses, and additional tax dollars for the county we have chosen to call home for all my life. I have lived in an area of this project that is being considered for mine. Yeah, I have lived in this area that this project is being considered for my entire life. Even though the view out my window might change, it'll still be my home. I'll still be able to farm my ground, and my wife will still be able to keep her cow in our back pasture. The project will bring in additional income for not only us, but our friends, neighbors, the landowners we farm for. This project will bring changes to my home area I live, but it also brings too many opportunities for me to say no to it. So I hope you will join me in supporting the Expedition Wind project. Thank you.
I'm Evelyn Head, and I live at 10 Flower. And we reside in Fairplay Township and also in the grid where this is a possibility of. I'm reading this for Mrs. Wilma Regier from 424 South Freeburn, Marion, Kansas. To whom it may concern, does anyone from here remember a time before we had the use of electricity? Probably not many of you. I was born in 1927, and I remember the time when rural electrification came to our farming community of Durham, Kansas. For long years, it seemed an impossible dream to actually get electricity and how to promise to be a reality in 1941. We would soon experience the benefits and conveniences that electricity offered. How exciting it was that summer of 1941 to see the electric poles and rolls of copper wire being dropped off by trucks along the roadside. And by October 1, the incredible moment had arrived. It was real. We had electricity. We had lights. We had power to help with farm work and housework. The time was before World War II, and now the acquiring of rural electrification was being seriously threatened by the ominous spread of World War II and its shortages. No one can give much thought of fuel requirements. After all, we would always have coal and oil, wouldn't we? Then, also in 1941 in December, World War II arrived. This ended an immediate expansion of Rural Electric Association, REA, until the dreary 4 years of war came to an end in year 1945. Now back to 2019. And the use of coal and fossil fuels are being discouraged in part because they are not renewable sources of energy. Now we have the opportunity to produce a renewable source of energy in Marion County, and I hope we will not let this opportunity pass. Not only is wind energy renewable, it's clean source of energy and doesn't emit any greenhouse gases, by helping to reduce pollution. Wind power also has a very small footprint. The new turbines can easily be installed on existing rural land, allowing the land to be multi-purpose. This can be a welcome source of revenue, especially for small farmers who do okay with prices and good. But more often than not, the agriculture prices are down, our crops are affected by the natural disasters. These wind farms may be a way to help save the family farm in Marion County. Also, the money coming into Marion County will not stay in the pockets of farmers, but it will be spread around Marion County and the state. Taxes will be paid on the revenue, which will benefit all the residents of Marion County, as it will be used for schools and so forth. More revenue also means more jobs available in Marion County. It was almost any source of energy. There are some downsides to wind energy, but they don't appear to outweigh the upside. The blades of the windmill can kill birds and bats, but they don't kill as many as cars, power lines, and high-rise buildings do, according to the National Geographic. Many object to the looks of the wind turbines, and while I personally would rather not have them either, windmills are a particular solution to the energy problems in the country, and the newer turbines can look rather graceful as they spin in the wind. Having grown up during a time when there wasn't electricity in many of the rural areas, I can see the benefits of wind power along with an abundance of affordable energy, and I hope the building of this wind farm in Marion County will be allowed to continue. Sincerely, Wilma Regier.
I have to hold that. Thank you for taking time to consider my remarks. My name is Dorothy Barnett. I live at 129 West 25th in Hutchinson. I'm speaking to you from several perspectives today. I've been a Kansas resident for 45 years, growing up in rural Reno County. I was the coordinator of the Reno County Wind Energy Task Force that was created in 2007. And for the past decade, I've been the executive director of a Kansas-based nonprofit called the Climate and Energy Project. We're a statewide nonprofit focused on advancing the clean energy economy to create both economic benefits and environmental benefits. I'm here today to support the National Renewable Solutions Conditional Use Permit application to build the Expedition Wind Farm. For more than a decade, my work with the Climate and Energy Project has taken me across the state of Kansas. I've heard firsthand from landowners and communities, from chambers, county commissioners, city commissioners, economic development professionals, about the benefits that they have experienced by hosting wind turbines in their communities. Landowners frequently talk about their ability to weather economic downturns hosting wind turbines. One fifth-generation Kansas rancher talks about being able to keep the family farm during 3 years of drought when all of his neighbors were having to sell off both their cattle and their farms. Rural economic development professionals talk a lot about how the wind developers use local talent, local supplies, which is a real economic boon to their communities during the school phase, during the construction phase. I've also heard local schools talk about how they've been able to both grow their schools and modernize them without ever having to raise the mill levy in their communities. Growing up in rural Kansas, we know what that's like. Cloud County Community College, located in Concordia, has a wind energy technician program, It's the first in the country to have 100% job placement, allowing Kansans to get good paying jobs and keep those students at home. The Kansas wind industry has been a good neighbor and has created rural prosperity in our state. Today, we have 34 operational wind farms in 22 counties, with another 10 projects of development, including the Exhibition Wind Farm. Together, these projects represent 8,000 megawatts of wind power. So what does 8,000 megawatts of wind energy mean for Kansas? With 8,000 megawatts of wind development, Kansas will benefit from more than 10,000 construction jobs, 800 permanent jobs, and 28,000 direct and indirect jobs. With 8,000 megawatts of wind development in Kansas, landowners and counties hosting wind farms both benefit. Across the state, landowners will receive an average of $40,250,720 annually. That's approximately $5,021 per megawatt per year. Communities across Kansas will receive approximately $35,248,000 in donations and taxes, approximately $4,406 per megawatt annually. According to the Fort Hays Economic Impact Study that you all heard about earlier, Marion County will benefit greatly as well. Your $2,142,000 that landowners will receive annually is actually nearly double what the state's average is. So this wind project has a very robust lease payments to your landowners. The counties and the various taxing entities that are represented will receive $901,742 annually, which is just slightly above the state average. So again, really having robust economic benefit to your state. 12 years ago, the Reno County Commission created the Reno County Wind Energy Task Force to explore opportunities for wind power. While the task force was not directly involved in bringing Siemens Gamesa to Hutchinson, the work that was done leading up to it certainly helped bring that $50 million plant and 350 jobs to Kansas. I would just say that Kansas has benefited greatly from the wind industry with more than $10 billion of capital investment. Local job creation during and after has made a huge difference. I would encourage you to support this project so that Marion County can receive those benefits as well. Happy to answer questions if you have them. Thank you.
I'm Nancy Tharp. I'm from 1649 Bluestem, Marion, Kansas. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We have property in the Expedition Wind Farm LLC footprint. We work and our family lives inside this footprint. Our grandchildren are the 7th generation Tharps, and they live on the homestead there. As you can see, I've written way too much, so I'm going to do my best to condense this. I normally don't talk from paper, so this is even going to... Oh, excuse me. I'm used to yelling too, so this may or may not work. If this is too loud, then tell me to back it up. Okay, so anyway, Blair, my family and I, we want this Expedition Wind Farm. We've talked about these over the years, and we think it's very exciting. While our conversations were happening here, progress was being made all across the USA, our state of Kansas, and here in Marion County. While Expedition Wind is new to us, our thoughts toward having their wind farm here have only become more solid. The current articles of our zoning laws are satisfactory. We know that as contract owners, that through the years we'll be able to work with the officials in this company per protocol. I am pleased that our schools would receive monies that would benefit them in the years to come. But I do want to address a few items.
and I want to thank the zoning board for our meeting tonight. I ask for a thoughtful and forward-thinking review of your findings related to Marion County's outcome, as well as Marion's position as the county seat. I do believe that decisions concerning the Diamond Vista Wind Farm in northern Marion County might have gone a little bit different had we have known that there would be such opposition to this one. Maybe the money would have been delegated a bit differently. After all, the idea of a wind farm in southern Marion County isn't new. We have reviewed commission meeting minutes, not all of them, but several. They were conducted during the passing of the Diamond Vista Wind Farm. Votes then were 3-0 when it came to the actual passing of the wind farm. We certainly have questioned why. I'm just not convinced that the reasons are what we read are in the paper. After all these years of wind farm technology, the only factual piece of information that I can confirm is the height. I will agree they're tall. That does not concern me. Blair and I visited the Vista Wind Farm not long ago. They're just awesome to watch. I can't wait. But anyway, back to business. They didn't seem so tall then. We stopped by to watch 3 in a row, to observe, to listen, to look. Nothing about these wind turbines were alarming. They were nice to look at. We were close to them. I walked underneath one, then I stood between 2. They really don't make the noise that being claimed. I heard western meadowlarks singing above the sound they make, even when the generators turned on. I was right beside them. So the science, it really isn't so. And the rest is just speculation that we're just reading and hearing so much about. But now I want to talk money. Money's going to the schools of Hillsborough and Center. I'm excited for them. They can keep their schools current as well as offer their new programs, attracting new students and staff. I do believe that this puts other schools at a disadvantage. Why should those schools receive thousands more dollars? I want our schools to be able to have the same opportunities. I want our towns to have the same advantages as well. I want the town of Marion to remain the county seat. I don't think I'm being unreasonable, although it is a reality if other schools in the county are giving large advantages. Is this where this opposition is headed? To disadvantage the other schools? To disadvantage our other towns? To cause problems for the town of Marion? I truly hope not. Now I want to talk about snakes. Our daughter recently came upon a rattlesnake on the road. She didn't see it until it raised up like a cobra. They're an aggressive sort. Many of you might know about them. We have copperheads. We've had them for many years. Both are pretty or they're ugly. But one thing's for sure, it depends on the person. I think most are pretty. Even these 2 are, except that they're venomous. I know this by sound and proven science, not speculation. I've not been bit. But I do trust those who have studied, treated, been written about, and those who have been fanged. Proven science, not speculation, tells us what to expect about these snakes. And the same is true about wind farms. I've spent many hours going over wind farm materials, mostly research material of those with wind farm knowledge, reading the fine print. Proven science tells us about speculation. Proven science, not speculation, tells us what to expect from today's wind farms. Just proven science tells us rattlesnakes and copperheads are a problem. Am I done? Okay then. So once again, we really want the wind farm, we want the money, and that'll do it. And if I'm given more...
I'm very short. My name is Janice Wayner, and I live with my husband on a farm about 9 miles south of Marion. We live in the proposed wind farm area. About 10 years ago, when this project was started, landowners and farmers saw the potential for income from their land not dependent on weather and grain prices. Not only landowners will benefit from a wind farm, schools, counties, and cities' programs, hospitals, fire departments will see additional income. During the construction phase of the wind farm, local business such as restaurants, rock quarries, truck drivers, and concrete companies all showed increased businesses while the northern wind farm was being constructed. Expedition Wind and others had devoted time, energy, and finances to give Marion County a substantial positive impact. It is time to finish the project and with your help and the county commissioners, I fear that this could happen. Thank you for your.
I'm Warren Slocum. My wife's here in the audience also, and we live in Manhattan, Kansas, and I grew up and lived for 72 years on a farm that is in the middle of this wind project, and we had 2 grandchildren going to K-State, and so that's kind of where we thought we ought to be for a while. The Expedition Wind Farm looks like progress for everyone. The property owners will receive annual payments for the lease amounting to a good portion of their property tax. And this does not count for the revenue payments for any of the towers that might be on their property. This will be a great help at this time of low commodity prices. Marion County will benefit from the improved roads in this area and also an expendable tax base, which will be a big benefit to the taxpayers of this county. The additional income for landowners in Marion County should improve the economy of the entire area. Wind energy has been around for many years. When I was a child, my parents had a wind charger on top of our 60-foot silo. That powered batteries that were in the basement that stored the energy, I guess. My mother would do her washing and ironing on the days when the wind blew. If any of you have flown across the United States and in foreign countries, it is apparent that harnessing wind power is being successfully done everywhere. We believe that now is the time to take advantage of the renewable energy resources here in Marion County. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Lori Peter. I live within the footprint near Olney at 1374 Quail Creek Road. Well, actually, I don't live in the footprint anymore. They have gerrymandered the conditional use permit to exclude us from the property. As per this map right here, I was in the CUP, but now I have been excluded. You'll see a map later from my husband how we've been taken out. My concerns regarding the wind farm are health issues, setbacks, and real estate values. I would like to start telling you about many of the people who have health-related issues while living within the footprint. As I stated, health issues is one of my concerns. Norma Schmidt lives in rural Ontario, Canada, in the midst of Kingsburg Wind Power Project, consisting of 110 wind turbines. Yes, you have heard that there are no health issues. Let me tell you, there are plenty of stories out there, personal testimonies of issues. Her story, along with many others, can be viewed in a YouTube video called Downwind. She tells about life living with wind turbines as pure hell. She lives near 6 turbines, with one of them as close as 1,450 feet to her house. She started suffering migraines, nausea, dizziness, and often vomit, and was unable to sleep at night. She lost so much weight that she got down to 98 pounds. Her medical condition was so bad that she had to quit working. At her doctor's orders, she had to leave her dream home. She had to move in with her daughter. Second, I would like to address the boundary lines. It is said that the setback is 2,000 feet from a turbine to a house. Well, I would like to make sure that that setback is a minimum from the turbines to the property line. You see, we have 10 acres of property. It is narrow and long, measuring about 400 feet by 900 feet. The house is in the center from east to west, but sits about 300 feet from the north boundary, leaving about 550 feet from the southern boundary. I want to be able to utilize and enjoy the full 10 acres of my property. North of the house, we have planted an orchard with over 31 fruit trees. To the south of the house, we have planted a walnut orchard. We have planted and been nurturing over 50 trees. We have been waiting on this project to finish for over 10 years. A few of these are oaks, maples, pines. The host is putting in a trail system with a mixture of local wildflowers like echinacea, liatris, rudbeckia, and butterfly weed in the southern third of the property. The plan is to create a park-like area for the grandkids and future generations. We also have created a nice fire pit area just with rocks found on the property and lights strung up to enjoy our evenings outside and with the family for daily and special events. We are in the process of building our dream home on this property. Again, we have been waiting for 10 years. We have looked for several years before purchasing the land here in Marion County. We love the small community, the rural agricultural land on all sides. We also love the peace and quiet. I have never heard so many songbirds. A few years ago, we were so lucky to have a flock of rare whooping cranes rest on one of the proposed wind turbine sites, just west of our house. We were fortunate enough to be able to watch the whooping cranes outside my kitchen window. That's how close they were. We purchased this land in the country so that we could enjoy nature and be outside. I want to be able to enjoy every inch of my property, and I do not want to have to worry about health issues. I do not want to be a prisoner in my home. With the wind farm located to the southeast, south, and southwest of our property, we are concerned about the equity we are putting into our home. We will have to make adjustments to the quality and cost of the kitchen cabinets, countertops, and siding we choose. Yes, they said that the property values have not gone down, but it goes against them to devalue a property. I'm speaking about real estate property, not property taxes. My final concern is decline in property value once the farm is active. The National Association of Realtors impact study suggests the values are substantially impacted in the range of 12 to 40%. In a written article by Michael McCann, a real estate advisor regarding wind turbines in Adams County, Illinois in 2010, he stated that real estate sales data typically reveals a range of 25 to 40% loss in value, with some instances of total loss as measured by abandonment, which was Norma Schmidt's story. He also stated that serious impact to use and enjoyment of many homes is an ongoing occurrence. His recommendation to Adams County was that any distance less than 2 miles would impact property value and would be a detriment to residents and citizens. And the approval of wind energy projects within close proximity to occupied homes is a tantamount to inverse condemnation or regulatory taking of private properties, as rights as the noise and impacts are in some respects a physical invasion. An easement engross over neighboring properties and the direct impact reduce property values and the right of nearby neighbors. In conclusion, I am asking the planning and zoning members to seriously think about the negative impact of having a second wind farm and opening the door to a third and fourth wind farm. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You will not need to start your timer on this, I promise you. My name is Matt Spencer. I live at 410 Hill Street in Florence. I do have land in the footprint in the southern part. I'm here at the meeting to speak in favor of wind turbines. With the decrease of our non-renewable natural resources, wind is a viable, renewable, clean resource that we should use. One study that I read has Kansas as the second highest wind producing state in the nation. I think the first was North or South Dakota. This natural resource wind is free and clean. It is a renewable resource that we must use in Kansas. One thing to remember, change is always difficult, but without change we cannot improve, nor can we prosper.
I'm Stan Watchus, Gardner East Road, Gardner, Kansas. I'm representing my mother, who owns cattle grazing land here in the footprint area. My family's owned cattle grazing land property in the Flint Hills since shortly after the Civil War. My family's concern is the impact that the wind turbines will have on some of the best cattle grazing ranching land in the world. How much damage will be caused to the owner's land during construction is a question. My parents have experienced this damage with oil well development on their land in Oklahoma. How deep will the foundations go? I've heard something like 30 feet deep for the wind turbines. And then what will become of the foundations? I assume part of the foundation is above the ground. What will become of them if the equipment becomes obsolete in favor of solar energy equipment, or if the landowner wants to rescind the lease at some point? What access will Expedition Wind technicians and employees have to the land, and what damage to the land would accompany their access on the land? In addition to the cattle grazing and ranching value of the Flint Hills of Marion County, my family purchased property here because of the scenic beauty of the Flint Hills, which we believed would be compromised by a turbine being placed on the half section of land that completes the half section, or one of the half sections that my mother owns. We also have concerns about the impact of future development of our property when there's a wind turbine adjacent to it, and the impact on property values. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
I would first say thank you to you guys. My name is Darla Spencer. I live at 304 West 2nd in Florence. I want to say thank you to the commission, special thanks to Sharon. You guys have put in a lot of time in this. My speech will not be long. I know some people are trying to go complete 5 minutes to tie this up tonight. I'm going to be quick. First off, I just want to say one thing. Change is hard. We all know that. It's okay to disagree. That helps us become better people. But at the same time, we need to remember that disagreement also should make us better friends. It should not affect our community. I have a quick story to share. It's kind of funny how this came up. The other day, my son and I and my husband took a youth group kid, several of our youth group kids, to Garnett, which is about an hour and a half from Florence. We did it to see one of our youth group kids that was placed in some care over there. On our trip home, the sun was starting to set. We topped a hill. I can't even tell you the highway, but as we topped the hill, we were discussing God, how he used such beautiful paintbrushes. The sky was pink, the sky had purples, the sky had these different colors. We were discussing how amazing it was that God could paint such a beautiful picture for us. And one of the girls all of a sudden went to panicking because there was a wind turbine farm that was adjacent, and just as the sun was setting, my gosh, stop the car, we gotta get pictures. Well, we can't, we're topping a hill, we go down. She's disappointed. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anything so beautiful in my life. We top the next hill, and I look in my rearview mirror. My son is the only one behind me, no other cars in the distance, so we stop the vehicle. Our youth group, absolutely, from 6th grade to 12th grade, got out, took pictures, and were in awe over the amazing thing that they saw. We asked them on our way home, what do you guys think of wind turbine farms? They'd never heard of them before. Oh, we think that would be so cool. They go, that's our future. We've seen them on TV, but that's our future. That's us. And we go, you know, there's one being proposed in Marion County that could be in the vicinity of Florence. Those kids, I wish were in this room right now. If you could have seen the expressions on their face. Will they produce money for the schools? Well, you better believe they would. Yes, they would. Oh my gosh, maybe we could get, and they went off and off and off. That was our conversation for the next hour and a half. All I want to say to you guys is, that is our future. Those same wind turbines that we saw also had deer underneath them and turkeys underneath them, and cows, amazing cows underneath them. Those kids got pictures of those same things, so it didn't affect that. I just asked for the Planning Commission to consider the revenue that it would make for our county. Florence, Lord knows we need some help. The revenue that it can make for my town, where my children and grandchildren are going to grow up. I want you to also consider the jobs that it will bring in. These wind turbines don't go up automatically. I've seen some of the farms as they were getting produced in the Arbuckle Mountains, and I saw the capacity of the people that came into that area. To think about the young families that can move into our town and increase our schools, it just draws me in awe to think about some of those empty houses that are sitting in my town right now, possibly having families in them. Possibility of my youth group that my son is running and my church increasing in attendance. What an amazing thing. I gain nothing from this. I have no land. I don't own any of it. I also want to one other thing that I have not noticed that hasn't been spoke about. Up towards Durham, there's a wind turbine farm, and we noticed this as well towards Garnett. The county roads, my goodness, if you haven't driven them, go drive them. I can guarantee you around Florence, if I take my car any faster than 20, I'm liable to get my shocks out. Go drive those county roads. The wind turbine community, the people that do it, they keep those county roads up amazing to me. The only other thing that I want to add to one other thing here is that wind turbines are the future for my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. They are where our world is going to. Change is hard. I'm sure way back in the day when my grandparents and great-grandparents first saw oil wells going in, they thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Look at these eyesores. Because they didn't get one on their premises. They were probably a little jealous. Well, I'll be darned. Look at them now. Thank God for oil wells. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the cars that we have. We wouldn't drive what we do. Thank God for wind turbines, for that future for our children. The only other thing I have to add is that I ask that you guys and I know that you are taking in a lot of consideration. Please continue to do that for the future of Florence and the future of Marion County. Thank you.
How's that? My name is Mark Pankratz. I was born and raised in Hillsborough. I live at 218 North Adams in Hillsborough. And I would like to thank the Planning and Zoning Board and Director for all the hard work and time they spent in researching the windmill farm issues. I know it's often a thankless job. Okay. I work for Kansas City Planning and Zoning Department, Miami County Planning and Zoning Department just south of Johnson County, and for Sprint Mapping and Zoning for the cell phone tower leases. A group of us at Sprint that felt morally responsible to the people rather than the greed and profits. We called the cell phone tower sky trash, and they're only at 60 to 120 feet tall. So I understand the challenges and science of planning and zoning. I was in favor of windmill farms until I found out Expedition Windmill was going to put up 500-foot tall monsters. That's over 3.5 times, more than 3 times the height of grain elevators, if you can see my poor drawing. So next time you look at a grain elevator, look way up. After reading Article 23, I was rather shocked that a single industry that Windmill Farms, or WICS, has their own set of zoning and CUP regulations, and they overrule all other regulations, which I've never heard of. It's obvious that the windmill farm companies had a great deal of influence on Article 27. So I'd like to review some of Article 27 regulations. I gave out copies to the board members, and I put 2 asterisks in front of the ones I want to touch on today. And please read the rest of the comments before making a decision on the magnitude of this. Commercial wind energy, but it's a large industrial complex that manufactures electricity. Second way down, Article 27 states that it overrules all other zoning. I have never heard of that, and I don't know why it was written like that. Page 2. About halfway down, number 4, it talks about a conceptual plan. I'm not sure what a conceptual plan is, but normally you submit a preliminary plan and then a second final revised plan. It states that the specific seating of individual components, including towers, support structures, and all, are in a permanent spot. But then it states the towers are permitted to be moved and adjusted as necessary and for noise reasons. And they don't have to show any modifications to the development plan, which is necessary to know what's in the ground for the future. I read the right-of-way changes that the windmill farm was getting together with the county, and I cannot figure them out or understand them. And I have done mapping for years and read a lot of deeds and plans, so somebody will have to explain that to me. Page 3. Let's go to page 4. At the end of the project or individual turbine's life or their usefulness, how long do they have to remove them? Is it something they can wait until the whole project's done, or should they be taking them down as the windmills are damaged or no longer usable? We'll go to page 5. If a windmill catches fire, there's no way a fire department can put out the windmill fires. They're too tall. They just have to let them burn out and watch the burning pieces of the windmill fall down and possibly start fires in surrounding areas. It also talks about protecting sensitive areas that can be substituted for open areas. So if a sensitive area can be substituted, it really doesn't protect or preserve those areas. Go on to page 9, please. Due to the noise of the wind turbines, they can be moved, modified, or removed from service. How much time do they have to do this? And time needs to be defined. Over. Okay. I just want to make sure that planning and zoning has a chance to make a good decision, and I appreciate if you would consider tabling this until we can read all the information. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margie Stewart. I'm chair of the board of Audubon of Kansas, which is an independent conservation organization with statewide membership in the state of Kansas. I'd like to ask you about something that is missing from this application, and that is the official review done by the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism, which is part of the recommended guidelines for the siting of wind turbines in the state of Kansas. I didn't hear the developers refer to that. the wildlife of Kansas is, of course, owned by the people of Kansas and held in trust for all the people of Kansas, both of today and of the future. The guardian of that trust is our department, our Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. And in fulfillment of their obligation, they have, with great care, devised guidelines for the siting of wind turbines so that wildlife will not be damaged in the siting of the turbines. And one of those guidelines is that environmental reviews shall be conducted by the staff of Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. That doesn't seem to have been done, but it's not that, that the developers haven't had contact with the Department of Wildlife and Parks. They did ask them to do an initial review of this project, and I will leave with you a copy of that initial review. Their concerns are that this project's turbines are being sited in a lot of intact native prairie. The developer said that 30% of their project is in native grassland. That's a violation of the guidelines of Kansas. The developer said, and I was kind of astonished when they said this earlier tonight, they said, well, there's no critical habitat involved in our project. Well, they're from Minnesota, but here in Kansas, according to our guidelines, this is from our state guidelines, tallgrass prairie habitat is a core habitat in need of special emphasis. And indeed, in their initial contact with Wildlife and Parks, Wildlife and Parks told the developers that we're concerned about continued loss and fragmentation of native grasslands. We're concerned that your project is sited partly in native grassland. And we urge your project to avoid native grassland. And I would just recommend that if the developers are going to ignore that guideline, that the county consider respecting that guideline and insisting on that change in the application. The developers also said earlier tonight they didn't find any birds of concern, and yet Wildlife and Parks' initial analysis, which they did for the developers, mentioned a number of birds of concern, especially grassland birds, whose population is declining, as you've heard earlier, and which need the native prairie habitat to not become endangered. Wildlife and Parks pointed out to the developers that their project area included bald eagles, included whooping cranes, and especially included prairie chickens. You know, the greater prairie chicken was almost listed as a species that could be listed as endangered. And therefore they say with regard to prairie chickens, wind turbines should avoid further fragmentation of grassland habitat via road, turbine pad, transmission line, or substation construction. Well, I would only conclude by saying that the only reason we taxpayers give buckets of money to wind developers is because they're supposed to be green energy. Well, they can't be green if they ignore the state guidelines for the protection of wildlife. Thank you very much.
I'm going to interrupt here before we get to our next speaker. I think we're going to take another We'll make it a quick one, 5-minute recess. We'll start back up at 6 after 10. Thank you. We've got a ways to go yet. We're probably going to roll to at least a second night. If there's anybody wishing to speak that cannot make it tomorrow night, I might ask some of those in line maybe to yield to those people so that everybody has the opportunity to say what they want to say. So if there's anybody that can't make it, you might talk to some of the people in line, and if I can ask the people in line if you can be here tomorrow night, then please let them speak and we'll try and get through this. Thank you.
My name is Susan Mayo. I live at 1660 East 90th, and I am in the footprint. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for going through this, because I know it's a really complex problem. It's divisive in the community, and there are many sides to the issue. That area that I'm going to speak to follows up, I think, on the last presenter, which is that the majority of Marion County is in the Flint Hills ecoregion, which includes tall grass, native grass prairie, which there's only 4% of it left, and the majority is in Kansas. It is the #1 endangered ecosystem in the world. So there has been a large degree of movement to preserve that, to increase our awareness and appreciation of it. You can see this map here. The colored in area is the Flint Hills ecoregion. One of the things that's been done is there's a moratorium in what they call the tall grass heartland. You can switch to the next slide. The western edge of it is 77, and here in Marion County, the northern edge is Highway 50. So the proposed industrial wind site is just in the corner of that. So we could be at 77, and half of it is in the moratorium because it's in the Flint Hills. You could be 10 feet over and have a wind turbine because it's no longer. The division of that is fairly arbitrary. It's based on highways rather than geographical sense for, the ease of making maps. Go ahead, go back. You can nope, there we go, that's good. You can kind of see 77 going down there and then 50 in Peabody. I think there's different ways to look at the future of Marion County. One thing I'm curious is that we're seeing that there's a decline in population and income, but we already have a wind turbine establishment. And I'm wondering why we're still having a decrease in income and population if we already have one there. I'm not clear on that. I think there's different ways to look at how we can have our county move forward. If we look at Chase County, one of the things they've done is celebrate the Tallgrass National Prairie. They have things like the Symphony in Flint Hills, which has had, like $100 million worth of economic impact, Tallgrass National Preserve. There are ways to look at ecotourism, which is on the rise. 35% of all tourists say that ecotourism is something they're interested in, which is going places to look at the ecology of the land to help sustain it. There are also numbers of people that now, because of technology, people are able to work from their homes. There's been, I think, 140% increase in working from home since 2005. It's a way that's coming. It's a way that people that are young can come and live in this county. They don't have to find a job here. They can have a job and move here. And if the landscape, if we preserve that, that's something that they might want to do. I know that there are different viewpoints on whether the aesthetics of a wind turbine are accessible or beautiful, but I think they're not part of the natural landscape, and that's something that I think we have not always appreciated. It's worth preserving, and I think more and more we're seeing that that's something worth preserving economically and also in terms of the ecology. On a personal note, I am committed to the tallgrass prairie for a number of reasons. It's come into my life. We've lived on our land for 20 years. And I've worked now with Symphony of the Flint Hills. I'm music director for their fall event, Woodfest, and have become more and more entranced with the beauty and the uniqueness of the Tallgrass Prairie. I also had a residency through the Arts Commission last year, Tallgrass Artist Residency, which I composed a piece written, inspired by the sounds of the Tallgrass Prairie. And I came in contact with a number of artists and people that are totally interested in promoting the Tallgrass Prairie and the Flint Hills. As a result, I came back to my 14 acres and thought, what can I do here? And I got in contact with the Forest Service and now have a plan, a stewardship plan to reforest and create national native grasses on my land. I'm working with an artist to do a documentary. She's had films in the Sundance Film Festival. She's credible. There are a number of other artists. We're going to create an artist residency there. That's something that I think that can bring in a lot to our community. So I would encourage you to think about projects like that, and if nothing else, perhaps a setback of a mile from my place, because if we have turbines, none of that is going to happen for me and for the rest of the county. Thank you.
My name is Quentin Clark. I'm a resident of Minnow Township, Marion County. I've lived in Kansas, the state of Kansas, my entire life. Ellis County via Sedgwick County via now Marion. I moved here because it was quiet, peaceful, and it's not an industrialized area. I've been working in heavy equipment industry for nearly 20 years. When I went up to visit Diamond Vista, the experience was very similar to my work life in Plant 2 when you get up close enough to these things. With loud, heavy equipment and hydraulic pumps always on, it's definitely an industrial park up there now, not a Kansas-type environment. As I drove back home to Minnow Township, I solemnly became aware that I was once again back in the Kansas I knew. I want to play a short video about the economics of the state of Minnesota, actually, that has undertaken a lot of these wind farm projects.
Hello? Hello?
Are you And I had that. I had a lot more in my presentation, but I'm going to have to cut that short in lieu of other people being able to speak for tonight. So I would just ask the committee board members here to think thoroughly about this and make the right decision. This is going to impact our youth of this county, and if property taxes go up like we know they will, because nobody wants to live under these things, it's going to be a long-term loss of citizenship in this county, not gain. So I pray that you think it through hard, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Costello. I live in Marion, Kansas, 513 North Lincoln. I work for Tampa State Bank. I work in the Tampa location and also the Marion location. I had a lot of facts and figures. I want to talk to you about economic benefit. I'm not going to repeat what you've already heard. Most of you have. However, I've witnessed firsthand what's gone on with the Northern Marion County Diamond Vista project. They've been good neighbors. They've been very generous with their contributions to the local library, to the fire department. We've all heard about the taxes and the payments in lieu of taxes, and I've heard differing things there. But payments are going to be made even when taxes were not due. The benefit will be to the schools. The benefit will be to the county. The county commissioners deal with angry constituents all the time complaining about roads. I would challenge any of you here to go up to northern Marion County and look at some of the roads we have up there compared to the rest of the county. They're quite an improvement, and hopefully we'd see more of that in southern Marion County. The only other aspect I want to bring up is the jobs. How many industries come to Marion County and want to bring 20 permanent, good-paying jobs with good benefits like we have up in the north? Down here, they're expecting around 13 full-paying jobs. We don't get those kind of businesses. So I urge you to support the project. We need the business. We need the economic development. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Scott Robinson. My address is 282 South Pershing Street, Wichita, Kansas. My family owns land in the heart of the area leased by Expedition Wind at 100th and Quail Creek, and we have signed an agreement with them. I am a petroleum geologist with over 40 years of experience searching for oil and gas in Kansas, Colorado, and Nebraska. I love fossil fuels, so why would I be in favor of wind energy? My views on the subject changed in 2008 after hearing American businessman T. Boone Pickens' plan for U.S. energy independence, which to me made complete sense. His plan calls for a huge investment, over $1 trillion in wind turbine farms spread throughout the Great Plains, with wind energy providing a large portion of the nation's energy. The natural gas that is currently used to fuel power plants would instead be used to fuel thousands of vehicles, with an emphasis on natural gas burning fleets of long-hauling trucks and buses. The use of clean burning natural gas would improve our air quality and lessen our dependence on foreign oil. Pickens' plan would reduce the amount our country spends annually on foreign oil. Relying on imported oil from hostile countries means dealing with price volatility as well as national security concerns. Sourcing our energy needs with wind turbines domestically will mean greater American independence and stronger national security. Wind-generated electricity is a renewable energy source. The electricity it generates does not produce the greenhouse gas carbon dioxide. The fuel to run these wind turbines is free and does not need to be imported. The United States has an abundance of locations where wind can be harnessed, and how fortunate we are that one of those areas has been defined right here in Marion County. Wind turbines are a proven technology. The cost of wind power generation has decreased by nearly 80% over the last 20 years due to technology advances and is now cost competitive with other energy sources. This project is good for America, the state of Kansas, and Marion County. It is going to provide new jobs and long-term income to the county, the school districts, and the farmers and ranchers who own the land on which the wind farm is built. So let us move forward and see Expedition Wind's project to completion. Thank you.
My name is Martha Berner. I live at 2545 Upland Road, which is not in the wind farm area. My concern, the issue I wish to address, is the Doyle Cups and wind farm taxes. Since the economic benefits of wind farms are widely touted, I was curious to know what wind farms contribute in property taxes in Kansas. I saw the wind turbines go up along I-70 in Lincoln County in 2007 and 8, so I called the Lincoln County Assessor's Office and asked how much income they received per year from the wind farm. The answer was zero. She stated that the state had exempted wind farms from property tax. When I looked into this further, I did read that in 1999, the Kansas legislature enacted KSA 79-201, which gave wind generation assets in Kansas a property tax exemption for the entire life of the project. This was done as an incentive to encourage wind development in Kansas. Because it worked so well, The state felt in 2015 that this was no longer needed, and they decided they could reduce the state's wind farm support. They enacted Senate Bill 91, which capped the exemption at 10 years. The existing wind farms continue to have a lifetime grandfather tax exemption, but new wind farms have their exemption ended at 10 years and are taxed beginning at year 11. So far, no wind farms in Kansas are paying property tax because we haven't had one 10 years since 2016. There are two exemptions for this 10-year cap. One is for projects that filed an application for exemption with the Kansas Department of Revenue by December 31st, 2016. The second exemption is for wind projects that have received a conditional use permit from the applicable county by December 31st of 2016. Our other wind farm in Marion County, Diamond Vista Wind Project, had its CUP approved by the Marion County Commission on Monday, November 13, 2017. I checked with our courthouse and the assessor's office, and Marion County Assessor's Office has Diamond Vista Wind Farm on the list as being exempted for 10 years. Then they're supposed to be subject to property tax. My concern with the Expedition Wind Project is in their conditional use permit, or CUP. The development plan is 16 pages. On page 16, it states, Expedition Wind is seeking this 5th companion CUP alongside the other approved Doyle CUPs. The Doyle CUPs are listed individually on page 2. All 4 of these CUPs were approved between 2010 and 2015 or 16. My question is, if this current CUP is passed in conjunction with the Doyle CUPs, will this exempt Expedition Wind Farm from any property taxes for the life of the wind farm? The city of Marion may like to know about this also, as the building they are proposing to sell to the wind farm, will it be back on the tax rolls in 10 years, or will it be not until the end of the life of the wind farm? This may not be so much concern to Expedition Wind, because when you look at the website for National Renewable Solutions, most of the wind farms they have built, they have sold within the first few years. I would like to see that the Planning and Zoning Commission require, as part of approval of a CUP, a statement that the inclusion of the Doyle CUPs along with this CUP does not absolve the Expedition Wind Project or any future owners from their obligation to pay property taxes after the 10-year exemption. I do not feel it would be fair to Marion County or to the first wind farm to not have the other farm be under the same property tax laws. Thank you.
Is there anybody that hasn't spoken that cannot be here? I just want to make sure we get through everybody that can make it.
I'm Eugene Just. I live at 1388 Pawnee, which is right downtown Albany. So, I don't expect or anticipate a windmill on my place, but I do support the wind farm proposal. The economy has been talked about a bunch of times already. I won't go into that. But I grew up without electricity. I don't know how many of you here did, but without electricity, things were a lot tougher than they are today. We don't, any of us want to go back to those times, I don't think. And I can tell you the day and the time that our electricity was turned on, and it made a difference in our lives. We went from the dark to the light, basically. There was opposition even when the REA built the lines out in the country. We had neighbors that said, I don't want those unsightly lines on my farm, and I don't want a farm around them. But where would we be today without them? The wind is a renewable source of energy. A lot of us have talked about that. I have an agriculture book at home that was dated right at 1900. And in there it says, warns us not to put up too many windmills to pump water with because it'll use up the wind. Things have changed since then. I don't think we're going to use that all up today. But our power has to come from somewhere. And I know that somebody along the line gave up some things so that I could have electricity at my place. There's a lot of contention over this, but we've had the joy of having electricity at home. When the windmills first came in around Beaumont, we went down there and like everybody else was just trying to see what was going on. We opened the windows and there was an audible sound. More like the wind in the trees than a lot of noise. I live within 200 feet of the railroad. You talk about noise. We have it. We noticed it the first night we lived there when the train went right through our bedroom. And since then, we've learned to live with it. We don't even wake up when the trains go by today. And it's just something that you're going to have to live with. We also live within a block of a communication tower. I work within the shadow of that thing almost every day. It never has fallen on me yet. And as far as I know, it hasn't ruined my health. Now, some people may say it mentally, there was a problem there. But as far as my health is concerned, it's never bothered me. It's interesting to see the birds, especially the vultures, roost on that tower when there are 40, 50, 60 of them roosting there, and I've never seen a dead one yet that ran into the tower or fell off and broke its neck. I have pipelines that run through my fields. We have no problems with that, no adverse situations, and we do get to enjoy the natural gas for the heat that comes from that. So some of these buried things aren't a big problem. All progress comes with a price. And it's just whether we want to pay that price or not. I have a lot of good friends that live within my neighborhood. And my prayer is that when this is all settled and done, that they're still my friends and my neighbors, and that we can all live in harmony and enjoy each other's company. Thank you.
Henner. Is that better? My name is Karen Penner, and I'm also speaking for my husband, Larry Penner. We live at 928 Spruce Street in Newton, Kansas. And while we live in Harvey County, we are landowners in Catlin Township in Marion County, Kansas. And the 200 and almost 7 acres that we own is land that my father, Jonas Suderman, purchased many years ago. This land is important to me, and I support the Expedition Wind Project and desire it to move forward. I am passionate about my land rights and the agricultural future of my family land. My brother farms the land that we own, and I look forward to the Expedition Wind Project to help stabilize farm revenue, lower taxes, and improve rural roads. My husband adds,
I am in favor of any project that will improve and lower the cost of energy. I have to add a couple things. Someone talked about change, and we all sometimes don't want change. We want things to stay the same and be as they always have been. But life is change, and change is progress. And so that is important. Then I have to add, Eugene Just, who spoke just before me, is a classmate of mine. And we didn't get electricity until 1950. And so whoever said 1941 before, you know, and I remember the exact day when we got electricity. It was December 10, 1949. And my mother died. She enjoyed it for about 3 weeks before she went to the hospital and died, and didn't get to enjoy it much longer than that. So anyhow, that's all I have to say.
Good evening. My name is David Cooper. I live at 1426 Sherwood Lane in Salina, Kansas. Although I don't live in the project area, I do own land in the middle of it. My family is in support of the whole project. This land has been in my family since October of 1870. We visited the farm regularly, whether to work on things or just enjoy recreation there. I thank you for all of your work and patience on this project. I would echo a lot of the comments on economic benefits to the county, but again, those have already been said. One point I picked up in the news in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Lawrence Livermore Lab pointed out that 2018 was a record-setting year for electrical consumption, up 3.6% from the year prior, which is one of the highest increases in the last 10 years. And I only foresee that to continue. We love our electricity. It does a lot of nice things for us. And I see 200 megawatts. It might seem like a small number, but I see 200 megawatts as a way to help keep those costs down in the future. So I appreciate your support, and I would like you to support the Windborne Energy Expedition Wind Project. Thank you.
I think at this time, I want to thank everybody for their civility. I think things went rather smooth. At this point, we are going to recess to 7 p.m. tomorrow evening in this room, and we will pick up from there. Thank you.